means a return to worrying about kids' sports and their kids' heads at risk in sports like ice hockey, soccer, and football. Give us a call or a text. There are other parents who aren't worried. In fact, they're living vicariously through the kids. So we'll talk to you about overeager sports parents and the dangers of certain contact sports.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then we'll turn to NBC Sports Boston's Trenni Casey about the lacrosse drama unfolding at Tufts, where officials are investigating after about a dozen students were hospitalized after a workout led by a Navy SEAL graduate. Then Trenni will give us the latest on the standout season for the WNBA and the troubling impact of sports betting. It's all ahead on Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Today is the opening of the UN General Assembly in New York. President Biden has addressed the UN delegates for the last time as U.S. leader. He's called for a ceasefire in Gaza and the release of all hostages held by Hamas. Biden also addressed Russia's invasion of Ukraine, saying the world needs to stand by the Ukrainian people.
Will we sustain our support to help Ukraine win this war and preserve its freedom, or walk away and let aggression be renewed and a nation be destroyed? I know my answer. We cannot grow weary. We cannot look away. And we will not let up on our support for Ukraine. Not until Ukraine wins a just and durable peace in the UN Charter.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres convened the delegates earlier today. He says the world is moving toward the unimaginable with wars, famine, and climate change. Israel and Hezbollah militants based in Lebanon continue to attack each other. Israel has launched hundreds of airstrikes in Lebanon, and the Lebanese Ministry of Health says at least 558 people have been killed in Lebanon in the past 2 days. Israel and Hezbollah have been fighting since the Gaza war started in October. Last week, Israel detonated thousands of pagers and walkie-talkies owned by Hezbollah militants, killing dozens of people. NPR's Jane Araf says Hezbollah has vowed revenge.
The pager attacks were a huge security breach, and an Israeli attack a couple of days later in Beirut, killing a top commander, was seen as evidence of a spy network. So Hezbollah has launched retaliatory attacks into northern Israel, which it says were aimed at military targets. But it's indicated that it has not yet avenged last week's attacks, and we don't know what form that could take.
NPR's Jane Araf reporting from Beirut. U.S. intelligence officials say Russia and Iran are using artificial intelligence in their efforts to influence American voters. NPR's Shannon Bond has more.
American officials say Russia is using AI more than any other foreign actor in its efforts to sway the 2024 election. That includes synthetic images, video, audio, and text, targeting prominent U.S. figures and divisive issues like immigration. Intelligence officials say Russia aims to boost former President Donald Trump and denigrate Vice President Kamala Harris. Iran is also using AI to help write social media posts and fake news stories targeting U.S. voters in both English and Spanish. Iran is seeking to undercut Trump in the election. So far, officials say AI is helping foreign influence campaigns produce more tailored content more quickly, but it's not making their efforts more successful. Shannon Bond, NPR News.
On Wall Street, stocks are mixed at this hour. The Dow Jones Industrials are up about 116 points. The Nasdaq has fallen about 10. You're listening to NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. This year's MCAS scores are in. And 4 years after the pandemic closed schools across Massachusetts, the state is seeing some progress. Testing data show that science results are up in grades 5 and 10, and third grade math scores improved by 3%, though math results flatlined in most grades. Rob Gordon is with the state's Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Besides the MCAS scores, he says they're also seeing a dip in chronic absenteeism.
While we are not where we were pre-pandemic in terms of our percentage of students that were chronically absent, we did make improvement this year, and that number has dipped below 20% for the first time since the beginning of the pandemic.
This November, Massachusetts voters will decide on a ballot question on whether passing the MCAS should continue to be a high school graduation requirement. Suffolk County District Attorney Kevin Hayden says police across the district have confiscated 58 firearms last month. He says it's a large amount of guns to be seized, and it's also a number that points to lax gun laws in neighboring states. According to the Globe, the numbers prompted Hayden to point towards 9 states where gun laws are lax compared to Massachusetts, and where he adds weapons traffickers are buying guns to sell right here in Massachusetts. And we're looking at a cloudy day today. Temperatures in the low 60s. Red Sox play the Blue Jays in Canada tonight. It's 5 games left for the Sox. 63 degrees in Boston right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the law firm Cooley LLP. With offices in the U.S., Europe, and Asia, Cooley advises entrepreneurs, investors, financial institutions, and established companies around the world where innovation meets the law.
Hey, Eastern Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, as we do every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. And we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. You do not need any tickets, Jim.
Oh, my God.
You don't need to RSVP. Okay, here is our text question of the day. The New York Times has this opus dedicated to the wild banana, whatever that is. Scientists are warning, though, the bananas could be gone soon. They could be extinct. So we want to know, what would your life be without the beloved banana? How could you have my favorite peanut butter and banana sandwich, or bananas on your Wheaties? Or what about bananas in your smoothies? We want to know about your relationship with the banana. You can text us. We'll read the text right before the 1 o'clock news. The number to call and text at, well, don't call on the text. You just got to text on the text. 877.
Show's almost over, Marjorie. Let's get with it here, okay?
You don't want me to have any extra words here, Jimmy. I'm almost
Go
done.
ahead.
877-301-8970 is the number. 877-301-8970.
The banana. In any case, we're starting today's show in Woburn, where Boston 25 is reporting a brawl took place at a Pop Warner football game. Not between the kids, by the way, but started by adults from the opposing team from Boston, who apparently rushed onto the field and started going after the players, 12 and 13-year-olds. So is this just a reality of our fall football culture? Are parents a little too involved in their kids' sports? The answer is yes. And while we're at it, why are kids under 14 playing tackle football at all? The Concussion Legacy Foundation, which we talk about a lot, recommends against it with the backing of one of the great football players of all time, Brett Favre. Here's their latest ad with Brett Favre. Here he is.
I could be fighting depression, struggling to keep my thoughts straight. I could become violent, even towards my own children. When I'm your age, what will matter to me is not my youth football career, but that, like you, I'm a great parent and I can provide for my family.
So please, keep me out of tackle football until I'm 14.
And remember, this all comes against the backdrop of the quarterback for the Miami Dolphins suffering his fourth concussion a week or two ago on the football field. The number is 877-301-8970. You can call or text. Should we tone it down a notch? The parents and contact for kids when they're young. 877-301-8970. Can I tell you my position quite simply? Ban the parents and ban the contact. I mean, it's really, can you believe that those parents come down and start fighting with the kids? I mean, should they not be banned from every single football game forever? I mean, really?
Well, the police chief out there in Woburn, I guess he's saying they're waiting for someone to press charges, but no charges have been pressed.
I'll press charges.
But it's a little much for the parents to start attacking the 12-year-olds, I would say. I mean, you do see brawls between parents, unfortunately. You sometimes see brawls between the kids, not usually the parents attacking the kids when they're that young.
There was that dead guy not too long ago, that guy at a hockey game,
that was
remember?
A hockey game. Yeah. That was a while ago. I remember that was a horrible situation where the parents, one father attacked the other father in the parking lot and killed him. But anyway, I don't know why, we talk about this quite a bit, why anybody would let a kid that young play football because, they've basically documented all this now, that these repeated hits. This great piece, this is a while ago, too. This is the guy that was the subject of the movie, Amalu, the guy, how do you pronounce his name?
I don't know how to pronounce it. The guy in the movie Concussion.
Yes, he was in the movie Concussion. And he talks about how if you were to take a child who plays football and has been subjected, if you had this child undergo advanced radiological and neurocognitive studies during the season and several months after the season, you could see evidence in many cases of brain damage at the cellular level without even having had a concussion.
Correct.
It's the repeated hits. So I don't know why you want to start your kid having repeated hits like at 9 years old.
Well, can you
or 10
answer
years
that
old.
question, the rhetorical question? Why would any parent allow a kid younger, I think the 14 years is what the Concussion Legacy Foundation has written.
Yes.
Explain to me why any parent would say, I want my kid to have potentially have a concussion, get hit in the head playing. By the way, it's not just football. It's ice hockey. It's headers in soccer. Did you tell us, Jamie, that headers, or Zoe did, they're prohibited in Massachusetts until you're X number of years old, whatever it is. So at least they've moved there. What kind of parent says that's okay?
Well, I think people, the NFL is, people love to watch football in America. It's like the American sport.
Their kids not going to the NFL.
I know that, but I think a lot of people really think their kid's going to get a heads up, no pun intended, by starting early, starting at 9 or 10 or 11 years old. But the thing with football is you can't really be a little pipsqueak and play football for most of your life. So it seemed to me you want to wait until the kid at least grows enough to know whether he's got a chance at football, even in high school, never mind in college or going on to the NFL. So I think that's it. I also think people don't know, and they think this is become one of these culture war issues where it's.
You think the parent doesn't know that their kid's health is at risk?
I think that some parents do not know.
That is pathetic.
You always think people know more than they know, Jim. I think that they probably don't know. But anyway, it's very popular. It's very popular. It's starting now, and people are driving all over Massachusetts, taking their kids to Pee Wee or Pop Warner football games. And I had a brief experience with Pop Warner with my son, and I couldn't believe at the time. We didn't last long, by the way, that these coaches, they act like they are at Gillette Stadium. They got these.
Didn't you say you couldn't have a drink or something when it was a hot day?
Yeah. The steam was coming out of his ears. You could say it was really, really hot, and it was in August, and they were practicing, and the coach said he had to wait to get a drink, and that was it for me. And also they practiced much too much.
Can I tell another story? I'll give the number, and then I'm going to tell
877-301-8970. We're talking mostly about youth football, but you can also add in soccer and hockey, although I think youth football is the one I think people are most afraid of at this particular juncture. When it's tackle, I should say.
By the way, almost all the texts are about bananas. That's fine, but text about bananas and text about what we're talking about now. This is 10 years old, but this is so symptomatic of what's wrong, not just with kids playing tackle football, but with coaches in this case, not just parents. Remember this thing? It was in the New York Times, by the way. Yeah. Southbridge in Massachusetts played the Tantascwa Braves. Some of the kids were as young as 10. The final score was a mere 52-0. And the kids on the zero side of that, a half dozen of them, these are 10 and 11-year-olds, went to the hospital with concussions and missed school. And here's what the coach of the winning team said: my team is not dirty. This is after the other kids were all getting concussions. All the issues were on their side of the field. This is a football game, not a Hallmark event. This is a guy coaching 10 and 11-year-old kids. So I mean what I said, by the way. Anytime a parent misbehaves at a kid's sporting event, they should be banned for life from any kid's sporting event. And secondly, the MIAA could do it, or the legislature could do it, just outright ban tackle football for kids under 14. By the way, it doesn't mean they can't play football. They play flag football, which, by the way, is about to be introduced into the Olympics or something. So it's a serious sport. And then when they're of a certain age, if their parents are fine with having their head clunked all the time, then they can play tackle football. 877-301-8970.
Here's Steve from Norwood. I played Pop Warner, captained my high school football team, and coached it. But after watching the film Concussion, which we just mentioned, I cannot watch anymore. It's like watching gladiators and kind of playing like the game. He says we should be playing flag football, which you just mentioned. Dave in the car, you were first on the football hour. What do you think?
Hey, Dave.
Hey, I think that the problem is that I believe the NFL has done a masterful job making the focus just on concussions when the problem is the repeated hits.
Totally right.
And because they make it only by everything's concussion protocol. Oh, look at the great job they're doing. They took him out of the game. He's in concussion protocol. They're not. They've totally taken away what the issue is. And I think parents aren't understanding that, because if they didn't read that report or even see the movie, they're not aware of it.
And by the way, just to be clear, you mentioned and Marjorie mentioned, there's a cumulative impact of subconcussive hits to the head.
Which
they pile up
in irreversible brain damage.
Yeah, and by the way, you're totally right about the concussion thing, Dave, but even the concussion itself, it appears, we're going to discuss that with Trenni Casey in about 20 minutes, it appears that the quarterback for the Dolphins is going to return to football, pro football at some point. What message does that send the kid watching him play when the announcer said, despite having 4 concussions in 5 years or whatever it is, he's returning triumphantly to the football field? It basically says you too can do what Tua did. So across the board, the NFL is really fallen short as a euphemism. Dave, that was a great call. Thanks for making it. 877-301-8970. Can I also quote, I know this aggravates people because they idolize him. I said this the other day. When, I don't remember if it was Junior Seau dying or some horrible outcome of someone who had CTE based on concussions early in their football life, Tom Brady, who was then the greatest quarterback ever, I guess he still is, but was then playing, was asked about his kid playing football, and his response was something like, whatever he decides to do, I'll support. No, not even a mandatory, we'll sit down, we'll tell him what the risks are, et cetera, et cetera. Another example of sending, in my opinion, exactly the wrong message to parents. And by the way, you're right. There is a lot of this wannabeism that my kid is the kid who's going to go to the pros. My kid is going to be the star. And the vast majority, needless to say, aren't that kid.
Here's Melissa in Newton. There also needs to be attention to how for-profit athletic clubs whip up parents about sports. I've seen parents dismiss scientific evidence that playing on artificial turf has increased rates of injuries, including concussion and heat stroke, because they've been assured by the coaches that it is safe. And listen to this one. When my son was 11, he wanted to go out for football. He was not even 5 feet tall and skinny, so I let him go to a summer week-long camp at the school. They used him as a football. He came home every day with these hilarious stories about how he was basically a rag doll they just had fun with, and that was the end of his football career. It stopped at an early age. Walter from Swampscott, thank you for calling.
Hello, Walter.
Good morning.
Hi.
Hello. Let me quickly profile my situation. I played football at the varsity level all the way through college. In graduate school, I coached Pop Warner, so I understand what these kids are, trying to do. I would have to say at this juncture, with all the medical information that has come out, 10 years ago, I would have been gung-ho, the kids should play. Where I am now, it's like, whoa, we got to reassess this.
Yeah, Walter, I'm glad, because lots of times people don't reassess. So what do you think now? No kids under 14?
That's a great place to start. I would like to see if we could develop better equipment. The biggest problem was when I grew up, I was taught to tackle with the head in front, stick your nose right where the ball is, force the fumble, and that's what gets you the big bangs. It's not so much the hit at the front of the helmet, because that ricochets through the padding of the helmet. It's when you get hit in the ear hole of the helmet that goes right to your temple.
We got it.
And rings the bell.
We got it. And let me just say, this notion about safety, better helmets, whatever. The helmet that Tua, and I'm not being disrespectful, I just can never pronounce his last name, was wearing was a helmet that had been approved by both the NFL Players Union and the NFL as the safest helmet there was, obviously not safe enough. And there's one player on the defense of the Patriots that wears that additional helmet thing that is optional that allegedly provides extra protection. But it's, one, I don't know if that's true, but in addition to that being the issue, notice that if I think there are 53 players on the Patriots, my understanding is 52 of them decided not to wear it because the league has this toxic masculinity thing that makes it, I guess, inappropriate. Walter, thanks for sharing your experience.
You know, here's a text I think really gets at a lot of what's going on here. It's the sports arm race. If you don't start playing travel leagues as an infant, these days there's no chance to make the high school team. People think their kids are going to the pros, and it's squeezed out many fun leagues that actually teach sportsmanship. And I think there is a lot of that going on. That I mean, your kids start playing soccer like at 4 and 5 years old. You know,
how about parents of kids that play ice hockey? They say they got to drive to rinks at 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning. Here's Sean from Worcester, which is a variation on what you just said there. Youth sports are expensive and year-round. Now, parents invest too much time and money in these games, along with their unrealistic expectations. Their 11 and 12-year-old will get a college scholarship if they're good enough. That's why violence at kids' sporting events is on the rise. Parents expect too much from their kids and these programs, and if something goes wrong, they lash out. That is perfect. Sean, thank you for sending it.
My 13-year-old daughter plays tackle rugby. The sport makes a concerted effort to teach kids safe tackling, low and around the legs. Refs have no tolerance policy. Any safe tackles result in players being immediately benched. It's still a contact sport and comes with risk, but it's with a top-down approach to safety. It sets an expectation for everyone involved. Greg from Natick.
By the way, we're going to discuss, as I said, this with Trenni, but I read a quote from Tues, the concussed quarterback for the Dolphins, who said he's been taught that the safe thing to do, particularly when you've had prior concussions, is the slide. When you see an opposing tackler,
was just a slide.
He knew what he's supposed to do, and yet he stuck his head right into the gut of
and when you see
the defensive player.
It's just
gruesome.
hard.
It's gruesome.
Ann from Plymouth, what do you think, Ann?
Hey, Ann.
Hi, first time, long time.
Thank you.
Really, really excited to be on the phone with you today.
We're glad to have you.
Thank you, Jim. I have a 9-year-old who has played flag football and has asked me for many years to sign him up for tackle. I have been super, super hesitant because I try to stay an informed parent, and I am informed about the concussions and what it means to play tackle. I am weakening by the day, but I must say that this segment that you've been talking about since the beginning of football season has really impacted my decision. And after listening to Marjorie, as I often do, I am going to reconsider that decision and try to speak to my other mom friends who were, we're looking to sign them up in the summer. It starts summer with the boot camps and the conditioning, and they are doing amazing things with the football programs nowadays. I must say, I have many mom friends who have football players that play tackle, starting at the Pop Warner. The helmets are amazing, the equipment's amazing, the coaches are amazing, but I feel as though there's only so much we can do. And accidents do happen. I have coached my son and my daughter's baseball team. I presently coach my daughter's basketball team. Accidents happen. However, with the tackle, I'm with Marjorie on this. Head to head, how is that going to get us into like a positive outcome?
Ann, that was a great first call. Don't go away. Two things. One, if you want to add to your arsenal of information, go to the Concussion Legacy Foundation's website, and you'll have much more stuff to arm you in this thing. It sounds like from your discussions that not only are you having to deal with your kids' desires, but also I assume your kid is saying, well, my best friend's parents are letting him play tackle football. What do you say to your kid in that circumstance?
I say that we make our own decisions as a family.
Good.
What our family does is our family's business, and my husband and I are choosing to raise our children under our own umbrella of ethics and code. We have a code of standards, which works for us and our parenting style.
And
don't get me wrong, I love football. I love all sports. I support the football. I support my family friends, my friends. I support for everyone.
We got
I
it.
just don't know if it's right for my son.
And make a second call soon. We thank you for listening and for your first call. An anonymous texter says, yeah, it's expensive, and yes, it takes a lot of time. Add to that fact that my kid stinks. Rarely gets the ball, but we're there every weekend, all day.
Listen to this from John from Boxford. Think about it this way. To the extent that such a large percentage of the American adult male population is kind of a hot mess, most of them are probably walking around living their lives with undiagnosed, low-grade, traumatic head trauma from youth and high school football. We see it reflected in the violence, the depression, the loneliness, etc., and it's very unfortunate. But, on the other hand, says Becky from Mattapan, agree with everything you're saying, but you might mention a good NFL story. Last night, Damar Hamlin, the guy who nearly died on the field.
And who tackled Tua.
He got his first interception in Monday Night Football. How can anyone not love him? I mean, you see the dichotomy kind of.
By the way, we got to take a break before we do. Sonia from Paxton says, I wish American parents would put this kind of energy into pushing scholastic performance as they do with sports. So do I.
We are taking a break, as Jim said, but we're still talking about this sports in an early age, particularly tackle football at an early age. If you want to call or text, the number is 877-301-8970. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
When the news matters.
Some officials say non-residents are making it hard for locals to find shelter space.
GBH News sticks with the story.
The outside of Quincy's Wollaston T Station has recently seen migrants sleeping overnight.
Continued coverage and in-depth analysis at your fingertips.
Many of them fleeing violence and economic upheaval in Haiti.
GBH News 89.7. Online at gbhnews.org.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Johnson & Wales University. From faculty mentors to research and internships, JWU helps students explore their passions through an immersive approach to education. You can discover more at jwu.edu. And Atlantic Design Center by Eldridge Lumber and Hardware, committed to helping you achieve your vision for a new kitchen or bathroom and guiding you from design to completion, with showrooms in York and Portland, Maine. AtlanticDesignCTR.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're back here tomorrow and Friday. Marjorie, I forget. My apologies. Do you need tickets to come here?
Do not need any tickets.
You do?
But we have a TikTok about it.
Do you need to RSVP? I can't remember.
RSVP.
What do we have?
Yeah, Nicole put together a TikTok answering all the texters' questions about tickets to the Boston Public Library.
How do you go find our TikTok page?
That's a good question, Jim. I don't know. Do you know?
Yeah, I do. I just asked Jamie. That's the only reason I know. At Boston Public Radio. So our text question of the day, it's from Marjorie. The banana and you. Scientists are warning the bananas could be gone soon. So we want to know, what would life be without the banana?
Very sad.
And what's your relationship with the banana? It's very close in Marjorie's case.
Exactly.
Text us at 877-301-8970. You were just joining us. We're talking with parents out there about how you navigate keeping your kids safe while letting them pursue the sports they want to pursue. We're talking about parents also misbehaving, like these parents in Woburn that stormed the field to fight not with other parents, but with the 12 and 13-year-old athletes, and the whole notion that you got to be insane to allow, in my opinion, to allow a kid under 14 to play tackle football with the threat of head damage.
You know, just a couple of horror stories. Aaron Hernandez was diagnosed with CTE after he died. He killed one person, was convicted of that, allegedly killed two other people. He was 26, I believe, when he took his own life in prison, and he had accumulated all these injuries over the years to his head. And there's also stories now about high school kids that have this CTE because of the repeated maybe reported or unknown hits to the head, maybe not even rising the level of concussions.
We don't know that they have CTE because you can't diagnose it until you're dead.
The kid's dead.
Oh, the kid is dead.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Yes. Peter from Rehoboth said, I played football for 3 years of high school. Every year had a concussion. My senior year, I received a concussion so bad I couldn't play. Now as an adult, it was I think it was super unsafe because so many students would not report that they had a concussion.
Exactly.
Or they just went off after a big hit and said nothing. He says, now I'm a nurse, says Peter. It took a long time for me to fix my focusing issues. and I have had chronic concussion syndrome now for several years.
It's pretty horrible. Let's go to, I hope I got the name right. Is it Ani in New Bedford? You're next on Boston Public Radio. Thank you for your call.
Hi, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you.
I work in scholar support, and I specialize in helping students who are recovering from traumatic brain injury, either from sports injury or from epilepsy. And so my job is actually to create plans to assist with memory and mitigate some of the impacts from their injuries.
So after the fact, as opposed to preventing them before they happen, or do I get that right?
That's correct, yes.
So, well...
Do you see kids that have these concussion injuries early in life?
I do. So I work primarily with elementary students.
Elementary students with concussions?
Yeah, so that's true. So it could be from like non-sports related and sometimes sports related. So if there's a student who's been playing and they experience a concussion and it impacts their academic performance, then I would work with them.
How do you
come up with like a...
Can we talk for a second about what you do, and then I want to go back to what you don't do, which is attempt to prevent them. I'm not being critical. Obviously, your job is your job.
No, of course not.
What's the mitigate? What does mitigation look like after some of the damage has been done?
So primarily, it's removing repeated exposure.
I see.
So, like, if a student experienced a concussion in a sports event, then perhaps we would work the parents to consider taking them out of that sport.
And how, I know you don't have, every case is different. How often after a kid has had that kind of head injury and you go to the parent and say, you should consider taking the kid out, do they take the kid out?
It's variable, but treatment for me can last anywhere from a few months to like ongoing for years.
Can I ask one more question?
Hold on. There are certainly schools all around the country now, and certainly in Massachusetts, where if you get a concussion in a game, you have to take you have the baseline test at the beginning of the year. Then if you get a concussion, until you pass that baseline test again, which is like speed of identifying triangles and stuff like that, you can't even play again. Is that not yet available in the elementary school, or because it seems like it should be kind of taken out of the parents' hands?
No, that is available. So that would be true. It's just like we don't like provide these sports. So it's not like a sport that's happening on our campus. It could be like in a club setting. So we have a student who might be on a 504 plan or an IEP plan who is receiving services from us. And we will start to see the effects creep into their academic performance.
Ani, I just have one last quick question. So back to the parents, after there's been some sort of an injury and you say you should at least consider not having your kid return to that sport, what's the argument that a parent makes when they say, well, we're going to have him continue with the sport in which he was injured? What do they say, or she? What do they say?
That's a really good question. It is variable. Like you said, it's kind of case to case. So if a parent is adamant about keeping their student in that sport, then we will provide every academic support.
Right, but why would they be adamant is my question. If your kid's been injured and he's not like, Tom Brady, even if you're Tom Brady, it's enough. What's a possible, do they give you a reason or just we've made the decision?
One reasoning is because of like family history.
Okay.
So there's a lot of like familial pride
I got it.
this is a sport that I played.
Got it.
I would love it. It's like a big bonding moment.
Ani, we're really glad you called and shared your expertise. Is this today breaking news? Brett Favre, we just played the sound of Brett Favre, who is, for those who don't know, one of the best quarterbacks who ever played, mostly for the Green Bay Packers. And he has done a video for the Concussion Legacy Foundation. It's pretty impressive. Jamie just shared with us, Brett Favre reveals Parkinson's diagnosis during congressional hearing. And by the way, that's sort of what happened to Muhammad Ali after being hit repeatedly. They had Brett Favre revealed Tuesday, that's today. He was, quote, recently diagnosed with Parkinson's disease during his testimony at a congressional hearing on federal welfare reform. Well, by the way, the reason he's testifying is because he was accused of having sort of stolen money from his home state's welfare system, Mississippi, which has nothing to do, of course, with his head injuries.
You know, there's a very interesting piece written back in June in the New York Times by Catherine Zezer Morton called "Why Do Parents Obsess Over Kids' Athletics?" And it talked about the fact that, you know, as many people have pointed out, college is so expensive now. Lots of parents are hoping that if their kid is good in sports, they can get a break on how much it costs them to go to college. But she's also talking about so many parents are working now, very long jobs, and there's a certain guilt assuasion if you are accompanying your kid to these sporting practices and games all weekend, that you're showing up, you're being a good parent there, because you may not feel you're being a good parent all the time because you don't have time because you're working too much. I thought that was an interesting...
Well, I can see that conversation. The parent says, I apologize for not being available, but Johnny, now you can get your head crushed on the football field to show that I'm a parent who
Well, we
lets
hope
you do
they
what
don't
you
go
wanna
that
do.
far. And kudos to the schools for putting in these baseline tests, because I think a lot of people would fight to go back before they should go
Were it
back.
not for that.
But they should be prevented by the school if it's on top
You know,
of the
Ani
situation.
said it's variable. Can you answer that question for me before we end this?
What?
You're a parent, Ani or somebody like you says your kid suffered some head injury. He's not or she's not back to the baseline. You should consider dropping the sport. Explain to me what parent under what circumstances says, we decided let him or her go back and put them at risk. I just don't get
maybe
it.
the same kind of parents that don't get their kids vaccinated. I don't know. There's a political thing going on there, I think, is part of this. I think it's the whiny libs, were complaining about something else. But you know what this doctor said, and I thought it was a great line ever about concussions, your child has one brain.
That's true.
And that's it. Anyway, we're going to talk with Trenni Casey up next. We're going to talk to her. She's, of course, from NBC Sports Boston. We're going to talk to her about concussions, what's going on with kids and what's going on in the NFL. We're also going to talk to her about Tufts. You probably read about this. The lacrosse players, a bunch of them, about a dozen, were hospitalized after this Navy SEAL-inspired training program, which sends all these kids to the hospital. Plus the traveling Celtics Larry O'Brien Trophy. I guess it's gone all over the world, Jim. That's next on Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at GBH, streaming at YouTube. Oops, what are we streaming at? We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Both major presidential candidates are painting China as a threat. Some experts question whether all the tough talk is having much of an impact.
Have we actually been able to change China's behavior in any way?
How U.S.-China relations are playing out in the U.S. presidential campaign. That's next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Rockland Trust Bank, committed to helping individuals and local businesses work towards their financial goals by providing financial advice and resources. More at rocklandtrust.org. Rockland Trust Bank, where each relationship matters. Member FDIC. And Boston Medical Center, committed to delivering medical excellence that empowers all patients. Learn more about how BMC's team of experts is rewriting cancer care, sickle cell care, and beyond at bmc.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're back here tomorrow and Friday. No tickets or RSVP needed. And by the way, if you go to our TikTok page, apparently Nicole has put something together with all of the responses yesterday, which we didn't even ask for, to the whole ticket issue. Remember, our text question of the day today is about the banana and you. Scientists are warning bananas could be gone soon, so we want to know, what would life be without a banana? Could Marjorie ever have another smoothie or banana? And what's the one in the sandwich? Banana, peanut butter?
Banana sandwich, my favorite sandwich. I have it 3 days a week.
Okay, fine. 877-301-8970. Text us with the answer to that question. We'll read some of the best ones before 1. We're now joined at the BPL desk by Trenni Casey. Trenni's an anchor reporter for NBC Sports Boston, and a BPR contributor. Hi, Trenni.
And carb-loading banana enthusiast.
Are you?
Well, only when I carb load. So I try not to eat too many bananas when I'm not when I'm a little bit lower carb. But if I'm running a lot, I put them in my smoothies. When I have to carb load for a race and I'm not kidding. Before a race, I'll eat 400 to 450 grams of carbs a day for 3 days. Ooh. So I'll put bananas on like a sandwich with peanut butter. I'll put bananas in oatmeal with raisins and maple syrup, like to get like 200 grams of carbs in like one sitting, like early in the morning. No banana, but you know what I don't like? Banana flavored things.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. Banana flavored things are gross.
Can I make a suggestion?
Pie.
If you have something
Any
to say
day.
about the banana, send us a text, okay?
Oh, all right.
Thank you. It's Trenni Casey from NBC
Well, you're not going to
Sports
read it anyway, so I'm just going to tell you what I think about
we are.
bananas right now.
He's very rude, as we know. It's very rude. Anyway, let's talk about concussions we've been talking about with our listeners. The Miami Dolphins, Tua
Tagovailoa.
Thank you very much. He has had several really bad concussions, a gruesome one. He's still debating his future.
Yeah, he's on the injured reserve right now, which means he has to be cleared. They need to, he cannot play right now. The Dolphins are actually down another quarterback because Skylar Thompson got absolutely nailed the other night or the other afternoon. He's whoever he is, their backup quarterback. And I know we talked about this briefly last week, but I think what shocked me the most about the Tua concussion, one, it was just jarring to see such a
gruesome.
It was not even a vicious hit. Like that to me should maybe be the biggest warning. Tua, he did not lead with his head. He almost sort of like glanced to the side of Damar Hamlin, and he led in with his shoulder. And I think Hamlin just moved a tiny bit, and then he ends up, the force of the blow was just enough that it knocked him backwards and put him in that fencing position. Like to watch the video on TV and see his arm involuntarily go out like this and then come back in slowly, which they say is a physical sign of a traumatic brain injury. That was one really tough thing. But the other thing is that afterwards, current and former players and coaches were just begging him to retire, which I don't think I've ever seen following a concussion. Like they look at him and they say, this isn't one big hit. Like no one said to Damar Hamlin after what happened to him, which is a freak accident.
He almost dies on the football field.
But like freak accident, right?
Yeah.
It's happened in other sports. That wasn't a football related injury. That just was the worst timing possible type of injury. And some would argue he was saved because he was on a football field and they had all of the necessary doctors. But anyway, I digress. No one came out and said, Damar Hamlin should never play football again. Or Aaron Rodgers blows out an Achilles. No one says don't play football again. But Tua, when he suffers his fourth concussion, everybody from Antonio Pierce, the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, to guys like Des Bryant and Marcus Spears on ESPN, it's just begging him to walk away.
But all the indications are, even though he hasn't said it in so many words, everything I've read said his intention is to return when he's cleared by the NFL.
And I don't know. Listen,
does the NFL really want him? I understand if you're a superstar, and he's sort of close to it.
Yeah, he's a quarterback of a big market team, so he's a star, but it's not.
But does the NFL, which worries about its reputation and money and virtually nothing else, let's assume, and I hope it doesn't happen, he comes back and gets another.
Oh, it's a terrible look
for the league.
It's a terrible look for the league. It's a terrible look for the Dolphins. But as we talked about last week, like what do you tell I don't know exactly how old Tua is, 26, 27, 28-year-old guy. You can't tell him. I suppose you can tell him that he can't do it.
Well, why don't you say if you're the team, we love you, you're a fabulous player, but we can't put ourselves in a position where we feel guilty for what may happen to you in the future.
Yeah.
So you're released. It's going to cost us a lot of money, but we're going to do the right thing.
But we're going to do the right thing, and we're going to pay you every dollar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is more than the $100 million that is guaranteed.
Yes.
In any case, so that's the update. Let's go from the pro football field to Tufts University and their national championship winning lacrosse team.
So they bring in this Navy SEAL to do exercises, and 3 people have to go to the hospital? Did
Actually,
I read
more,
that?
I think, went to the hospital. Yeah.
12? Oh, I thought I
think
only
3
read.
are still
Still
there.
in the hospital.
Still in the hospital. Okay, I knew I saw 3 somewhere. What exactly are Listen, I know that we want to compete in sports, and I know we want to compete in sports at the highest level, and I understand that everybody wants to push their teams to limits that they've never seen before to have a competitive advantage. But at what point do you not vet the person you're bringing in, take a look at what the environment in which your athletes are competing, what they're being put through, whether or not they can handle it, and also see the signs of what's happening to them throughout the workout and stop. Like, there is not always glory in, there's not always, there's no pain, no gain. Like, no, sometimes when there's pain, there is absolutely no gain, and you should just stop.
What's the name of the?
It was 9, not 12.
What's the name of the thing? You have the story. What's the name of the which I'd never heard before? Oh, begins with an R.
It's rhabdo.
I've never heard of this.
Rhabdomyolysis or lysis.
And what is it? The muscles break. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
A potentially fatal condition caused by overexertion so extreme that muscle tissue breaks down and releases a dangerous
toxin,
stew
right?
of chemicals into the bloodstream, and apparently it can affect your kidneys and your heart.
And you can die.
Yes.
And what this also indicates, there were not rest periods. They were not eating enough. They were not drinking enough. Like, they were pushing them to limits that their bodies couldn't handle. And no offense, Tufts lacrosse. I'm sure you're a lovely program, but like, what are we gain? Like, what is gained by doing this?
Well, can I say there's also I don't know anything about training anybody, but what I do know is what I read the last few days, and everything I've read said the most important thing when you're returning to training, particularly in the fall, is that you slowly transition.
Yes,
because you
always.
go from a low activity summer in most cases to ultimately high activity playing. When you start playing, this is the opposite of that. So there's no excuse. I haven't heard from the coaches. We haven't heard from the coaches yet, but there's no excuse for them not saying, even before it started, this is too intense at this stage of their fall training,
Also, like, these are college kids that are still growing.
Yeah.
You don't really, women hit their peak and sort of stop growing by the time you're like 18, but like, men don't sometimes fully finish their growth period until they're 22 to 25 years old. Like, that's the natural physical maturation of somebody. What I don't understand is this incessant need at no matter which level you're playing at to like push people to these crazy limits and not seeing the dangers in it. Like, again, what is Tufts lacrosse gaining by bringing in a Navy SEAL? It's lacrosse, for goodness sake.
Well, they are national champions, but I'm with you.
Yeah, but they're
national. Yeah, I agree completely.
Like, we're not talking.
Doesn't justify that, of course.
I don't care what level you're playing at, and I would also, and I don't know if it says this. I can't remember if it says this in the story or not. I don't believe at Tufts level, are these scholarship athletes? Are they, or is it, I could be wrong. I could be lumping Tufts in with like sort of that Ivy League group where you don't get full athletic scholarships. They sort of like move money around.
Whether they do or not. Point
is you're making these kids do this at that level. And again, not to dismiss a Division II or a Division III school, but like, this isn't the kids' future. These are going to be doctors and lawyers, and don't be a television broadcaster. It's a terrible industry to go into right now. But they're going to do all. I just can't. It's sort of like putting kids in, like you guys were talking about in the first segment, putting kids in tackle football before they're 14. Like, what do you gain by physically pushing young people to ridiculous limits? Like, what is the payoff? A national championship? What do those lacrosse kids get for being national champions?
Okay,
other than
one more bad news
saying
story.
they're national
yes,
champions.
and this is one of your favorite topics.
Yes, it is.
We have legalized sports gambling in Massachusetts, and this story by The Atlantic talks about the terrible downsides, more people declaring bankruptcy, not putting money in investments because they're betting on sports, and even domestic violence when the home team loses. I mean, this is kind of disturbing.
I am dubious too. After 6 years, I think you'll probably see a spike in things. That this is going to be the long-term effect, and I still stand by. You're putting this money somewhere. Like, do people who are now sports gambling, were they not playing the lottery before? Like, this happens with the lottery is terrible. People don't put money away, and instead they go and they hope to hit a quick fix. Like, I don't necessarily, I think gambling is a symptom of a larger problem. Like, to blame gambling, I think there's plenty of people, and maybe this is just my own, I work with a bunch of people who gamble. I gamble. I put like $5 on stuff. Like, I'm not tearing my family apart. I think people with addictive personalities, and I think people who don't make a lot of money, unfortunately, that tends to be the people who end up playing over and over and over again because they try to win something quickly.
By the way, let me be clear, though. I know you agree with this. The fact that people can sports gamble and be fine is sort of like you can drink alcohol and be fine.
Yeah, but we don't
You
ban-
can also drink to excess. And the problem with sports, I'm thinking as you're speaking of the people I know who gamble on sports now. I'm trying to think if even friends, if even one of them did it other than March Madness, which we all fill out the little cards for, and maybe on the Super Bowl. I don't think any of them gamble. It's so more easily accessible now. And why do you doubt that addiction is a problem for
I don't
people?
doubt that it's a problem, just like I don't doubt that alcohol addiction is a problem, and I don't doubt that people who never tried marijuana before, who now have access to it. I just feel like we regulate all of those other things. Why should sports gambling be any different? Like, it's not like, it's not like I know people who drink too much. I'm not like, well, we should ban alcohol because you can't handle your liquor.
Well, there's another reason, by the way, which is not mentioned in the Atlantic story. It's not as bad as the lottery, which is primarily played by poor people.
Yeah.
Sports gambling is more money is spent per capita by low and moderate income people than wealthy people. And the reason we have sports gambling and casinos, which was, I think, the one great mistake that Val Patrick made as governor, is because the legislature, most legislators don't have the courage to stand up and say, we need more money, so let's raise taxes equitably. Instead, we'll do something so that people can say, well, it's voluntary, so it's not taxation. It's just cowardice on the part of people who have power to raise money.
And that's the sort of the point I'm making. Like, the lottery is bad. Casinos are bad. Sports gambling is bad. And but I don't know. Do you take them all away? I just feel like people who have addictive personalities are going to find something. And if it's not that, then does something else go up? I just think that that's like...
Wait. Can we say first? No, we can't. Casinos are a good example. People have addictive personalities. If you live within 50 miles of a casino, you're much more likely to become addicted than if they're more than 50 miles away. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
You know what? One of the things I thought was really disturbing during March Madness, hearing these college kids, because you can bet now on these college games, talking about how if they miss the 3-shot or they do something...
Oh, it's not just college kids, it's pro too. Oh, they'll get death threats. Like, that to me is something... Yeah, I mean, that's... But
over the top, because college kids are obviously younger and
I mean,
you're
Massachusetts does ban gambling on college sports in state.
Meaning you could bet on Oklahoma playing Texas.
Like, I can bet on Marquette to win the national championship if I want to throw, $10 on Marquette to win the national championship. They also ban all prop bets. You can only bet on teams, not individual players in Massachusetts at the college level. But not everybody does. I mean, listen, I think it's something that's still... The college thing to me is definitely a little dicey because these are just still, again, they're still kids.
That kid, that big 7-foot-tall weird guy, looked a little bit like Lurch that was in the March Madness.
That is horrible.
Yeah, he was
the guy from Purdue.
That is
I think it's
Zach Edey, I believe is his name.
Exactly, that's his name. Thank you very much. He did. He had a little goofy thing going on. Great basketball player, though.
I mean,
he
listen,
talked about it.
It is hard because I hate the side of, but I would also say, where these people contact these people. Because of gambling on social media. Yeah. There's no regulation on social media. Like, there's all these areas that people can go now, whether to take it out on somebody else. Like, it's kind of a mess across the board. Like, that wouldn't be, like, if you're a college player or even a pro player who struggles and your team doesn't hit the over or you don't hit your line on the bet, like, they can just go now to Instagram or Threads or whatever it is, and Twitter, X, whatever it's called now, and destroy these people and get to them in ways. And I will say this about social media companies: they don't make it easy to block access to yourself. Like, you have to jump through hoops to get it so that no one can I have to figure out a way that I can get people to stop direct messaging me. I don't need to open my direct messages and have someone tell me how much they hate me. Like, no one likes that. And Instagram makes it really hard to do it. Like, it's like a real process. Like, it should be a simple click of a button that you can choose to be like, you know what, I want nothing to do with this.
So can we do a good news story?
Yes, I love good
Wonderful
news.
piece in the
great
Globe.
Story.
Oh, the Larry?
About the Larry.
O'Brien
Explain
trophy
what the
for
Larry
Celtics.
is.
Yeah.
Explain what the Larry is.
So Larry had the best summer ever. And by Larry, I mean Larry O'Brien, which is an inanimate object. The Larry O'Brien trophy is the trophy that's given to the NBA champion, which of course was the Celtics this year. And there was this really great, so today is the opening day of training camp for the Celtics. Today's media day. They do all their pictures, all their first
You know where they are
interviews.
today? Taking pictures?
Where?
GBH.
At GBH.
Oh,
Oh
are
my
they?
God.
Take
They
all
have
their
the
pictures at
white
GBH.
screen all
Yeah.
set up. The Celtics are coming and we're here.
pretty
so we
upset
don't
about
get
it.
to
That's a
see
bummer.
them.
You would have been able to see all my colleagues.
Yeah.
We're all there. We were broadcasting it live. You can catch full coverage tonight from 7 to 8 p.m. on
Excellent.
our Media Day special on
So
NBC
they just
Sports Boston.
posing for their pictures.
So they're posting, but they also do, media availabilities and talk.
Yeah.
But anyway, so on the eve of this, Adam Himmelsbach, who is the Celtics beat writer for the Boston Globe, did this really cute piece on the summer of Larry, the trophy. And first of all, I think it's Kara Keenan. Is that her name? The woman who was
It's the woman on the Celtics.
The woman on the Celtics.
She's
So
in charge.
They put
great.
one person and one other person, a guy, in charge of the trophy. So she had to make sure that the trophy got everywhere that it was supposed to go. It flew private. They would only fly Larry on a private jet. He could not go on a commercial airline. Larry went to St. Louis with Jason Tatum. He went to the Dominican Republic with Al Horford. He went to Rhode Island with Joe Mazzulla. He went to the Hamptons White Party.
Very snazzy.
Yes, with
Beyonce,
Jay-Z,
Didn't you go
Tom
to the wedding
Brady.
for
He
Pritchard?
went to Peyton Pritchard's wedding
At the Witchmere Harbor
at Harwich
Beach Club.
Port.
Yeah. Yeah, very snazzy.
Of course, he had a parade, but I'm like, I want the summer of Larry. I want someone to say, she'll only fly private.
But it's
We should
kinda
say,
nice.
we should say who Larry
Mazzulla?
O'Brien is. No, Larry O'Brien was the former commissioner of the league. And by the way, before that, he was head of the Democratic Party in America, which is sort of odd that I guess it was less polarized time.
I don't think I know this.
Yeah, he was head of the Democratic Party.
And also, Joe
Nationally.
Mazzulla, the coach of the Celtics, made it a point, I guess, to make sure that the trophy was brought around so people could actually see it.
Yes, he took it through. I'm so bummed. So my husband and I live in the North End, and he's brought it to the North End a couple of times.
Strega. It had its own share.
Strega,
I think it was on the table.
Aria Trattoria, which is a great, if you ever want it, it's a great tiny little restaurant. You go up the set of steps. It's small. It's cozy. It kind of just reminds you of the North End. He walked down the street, right past where we live, and he let everybody touch it. Everyone is in line at Monica's and, or Modern Pastry and everything like that. So yeah, it's just a really great story. And listen, they have a real legitimate chance of being the first basketball NBA team to win back-to-back titles since the 2018 Warriors.
Oh, let's hope so.
Listen,
I love that
Kristaps
team.
Porzingis, that's that injury is going to hurt them to start the season, but it doesn't matter. First 3 months don't matter. It matters what you do second half of the season. It matters what you do in April, May, and June.
He's the 7-footer who doesn't look like Lurch. Is that correct?
Yes, he does not
Just wanna
look
be
like
clear,
Lurch.
Marjorie.
Yes,
That was
Kristaps
horrible.
Porzingis.
I'm sorry.
Hurt himself. He's oft injured, so they have to be really careful
What
with
is
him.
wrong?
I believe this time it's a knee.
Knee.
Maybe
Okay.
it's an ankle. I don't
Okay.
know. To be quite honest, Marjorie, there's always something wrong with Kristaps
Yeah.
Porzingis.
There's always something wrong
There was
there.
always, and this could be Al Horford's last season.
Always something wrong there. What are you talking
Well,
about?
he has been injured a
He's
lot.
injured all the time.
Yeah.
That's the knock on him, that he's never been able to be quite the contributor that his talent level indicates because he's always injured.
But let me just say.
Like Bill Walton, the
in
end of his
spirit,
career.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was horrible with his foot and
With his
whatever.
feet. Well, I
Very
think those
sad.
really tall guys, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a 7'3" kind of guy.
That's a long
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
I think he's Latvian, if I remember correctly.
Is he
I believe he's
Latvian?
I don't know.
Latvian, yes.
Okay.
You know who else is Latvian?
Who?
We have another Latvian in town who's pretty prominent. Isn't Andres Nelson's from Latvia? As irrelevant as everything else we've said the last 3 minutes, don't you think?
You guys don't want to talk about the Patriots?
No.
Real
you have
quick,
1 minute.
real quick.
Say
Tell
what
us.
you want
What
to
do you
say.
want? What do you want
Oh,
to say?
God, no.
Horrible.
What am I
Like
gonna
the
say?
headline of Jade Sarchi's column, we knew they were bad, but not this bad.
Wait, whose column was that?
I think it was on Shaughnessy's. I'm
That's
getting
great.
it close to right.
Who wrote that great story about the Larry O'Brien? We should give him or her
Adam
credit.
Himmelsbach.
Oh, it was Adam
Yep.
Himmelsbach.
Yes,
Great.
I
Okay,
gave
you
a shout
did.
out.
I'm
Adam
sorry.
Himmelsbach.
Yeah,
He's a
great.
great writer,
Very
beat
clever.
writer. He's very clever.
Yeah.
Yes. But listen. Oh, we should really quickly also we didn't hit the WNBA. The Sun beat the Caitlin Clark-led Indiana Fever. They
She had a
crushed
horrible
them
game.
in game one. They kept Caitlin Clark to 11 points, 2 of 13 shooting from 3. Tomorrow night, they play them a second time. It's just a best-of-3 series in the WNBA in the playoffs, in the first round of the playoffs. So they can win. It's a weird setup. It's home, away. So they're the higher seed. So the Sun hosts the Indiana
So she
Fever.
could be out of the whole playoffs
She could
tomorrow
be out
night?
of the whole playoffs by tomorrow
and she
night.
just won Rookie of the Year.
Just won
unanimously.
Rookie of the Year, yep. And Asia Wilson won MVP. So
Unanimously,
great
too, yeah.
year for the WNBA. But the Sun are still in it. They're the local team. I know people want to see Caitlin Clark, but
Is that on
Sun-
TV tomorrow night?
I believe ESPN. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And the Patriots, do we have hope that they might improve?
No.
You know what? They might not be as bad as Jacksonville.
Okay.
That's nice.
Okay.
That's good.
Thank you very much.
Nice to see you, Trenni Casey. Thank you.
Reporter with NBC Sports Boston, and contributor locally and around the country. And our texting question of the day: what would life be like without the banana? That's next on Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH Live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Things can get better. World leaders never forget, though, some things are more important than staying in power. Biden's often said that about his predecessor, former President Donald Trump, who is running against Biden's Vice President Kamala Harris this year. Aurora, Colorado has become a flashpoint since a video of armed men entering an apartment there went viral. Former President Trump claims the burglars were members of Venezuelan gangs taking over the city, which he plans to visit soon. Colorado Public Radio's Kyle Harris has the Aurora mayor's response.
When Aurora Mayor Mike Kaufman, despite Trump's false claims about Aurora, the mayor plans to vote for him in November. But Kaufman says he won't be attending rallies. For NPR News, I'm Kyle Harris in Denver.
Israeli forces and Hezbollah militants based in Lebanon have continued to trade fire through the night. The Lebanese Health Ministry says 2 days of Israeli airstrikes have killed 558 people in Lebanon. NPR's Kat Lonsdorf reports.
Israel carried out more than 1,300 airstrikes on Monday, followed by several more overnight, mostly in southern Lebanon. It said the airstrikes took out Hezbollah munitions, including long-range cruise missiles aimed at Israel. Hezbollah in turn barraged Israel with more than 250 rockets shot deeper into the country than it has in almost a year of conflict. Most were intercepted mid-air, although some damage was reported, including at a regional hospital in northern Israel. Meanwhile, Israel has continued to issue warnings urging civilians in southern Lebanon to flee, saying it has not ruled out a possible ground invasion into Lebanese territory. Kat Lonsdorf, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
The Dow is up 17 points. This is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. State education officials say they're encouraged by the latest MCAS scores. This year's results were released today. Overall, scores improved in 3rd grade math and 5th and 10th grade science, but English language arts achievements is down across all grades compared to prior testing data. The state's education secretary, Patrick Tutwiler, says things are moving in the right direction, but there's still more work to be done.
Change in education is a process, not an event. Related, in education, the road back from the pandemic is not short, but this administration remains committed to students and ensuring that all of them realize their dreams and ambitions.
The state's chronic absenteeism rate has also dipped below 20% for the first time since the pandemic. Vice President Kamala Harris leads former President Donald Trump by 31 percentage points among likely young voters, so says the latest iteration of the Harvard Institute of Politics Youth Poll. The poll, released this morning, found 61% of 18 to 29-year-olds nationwide voting for Harris, 30% voting for Trump, and 9% expressing support for other candidates or undecided. Harris leads by double digits on key issues including abortion, climate change, and gun violence. The results were gathered between September 4th and through the 16th. The election is 42 days from today. Red Sox Blue Jays are back at it tonight north of the border. The Sox have 5 games left. Preseason hockey. Bruins play Washington tonight. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. Fisher's dedicated team of specialists provide resources on investing, retirement income, estate planning, and more. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
Eastern Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Will be here tomorrow and again on Friday. And Jim, we don't need any tickets or RSVP. You just walk in and stay as long as you want. Hello again.
By the way, and on our TikTok page, the most recent posting is about the fact that you don't need tickets.
You don't need tickets.
Check it out. Nobody thought you needed tickets, but whatever. It's a battle of the vice presidential PBS programming here on Boston Public Radio. Joined now by two award-winning GBH filmmakers about two brand new documentaries highlighting the role of vice presidents, past, present, and future. Cameo George is executive producer for American Experience, on to talk about their latest film, which examines the office of vice presidents throughout history. And as I said to you when I met you, I learned a lot, and I know Marjorie did too. It's terrific. And Raney Aronson-Rath is editor-in-chief and executive producer of Frontline on their new documentary, The VP Choice, about the life and political careers of candidates J.D. Vance and Tim Walz. And we should mention that not too long ago, Raney and her colleagues won the Academy Award for Best Documentary, 20 Days of Mariupol. And as we're talking about that, one of the great films ever, we're looking at young Raney, Cubette reporter, as we call him, for the Daily Cardinal at the University of Wisconsin in 1990, Raney. That's pretty incredible.
Thank you for finding that.
Frontline.
I had to say, 1990s hair. It was a moment.
It is 90s hair. You're right. Frontline's film will premiere on October 8th at 10 p.m. on GBH2 and Frontline YouTube channel. American Experiences, The American Vice President, premieres on October 1st at 8 p.m. on GBH2 and on the American Experience YouTube channel. And by the way, if you didn't get enough programming notes here, Frontline's The Choice 2024 Harris versus Trump, which we discussed with Michael Kirk last week, that is spectacular. He's the guy who made it. Premieres tonight at 9 p.m. on GBH2 and the Frontline YouTube channel. Segment's also almost over, so nice to see you both. Cameo and Raney, congratulations.
Nice to see you. So, Raney, let's start with you. How did this come about that you were getting ready with Frontline with the Veeps, and Cameo, you were already doing the Veeps, like the Veeps down through history? How did this come about?
I mean, I'll speak for Frontline, but we thought this particular season that we should look at the VP candidates, and Cameo can tell us the history, but for us, at the time, we were looking at Biden and Trump, and people started to ask questions about who were the people sitting next to them. And so we did commission a film. It was originally about Kamala Harris and whoever was going to be Trump's candidate with him. And then, of course, everything changed, as we all know, and we had to do a very intense pivot in the middle of the summer, and now we're working hard on the VP candidate show for Frontline, which airs on October 8th.
So, Raney, before we leave you, but you've been doing, you and your predecessors have been doing The Choice since 1988.
Yes.
Why this year, the VPs? Is it because how old the two candidates were? Obviously 78 and 81.
Here's
when
the
Biden
thing.
was in the race.
I started to feel this way actually when Pence was the vice president as
Really?
well. I started to wonder what was his ideology, what did he think about, what was he talking to Trump about during those years, and so I got really curious about that role as a VP. Then in this case, we thought, right, both of these men who are going to be running against each other, they have candidates next to them. We should know who's next in line. And so that's really the birth of this as an idea. First time we're doing it, so it's been an experiment, but I think it's a vital one, and Cameo will tell you why. I mean, they really play an important role in our history.
Well, that was one of the things that I learned is that, yeah, they really do play an important part, because I think 1 in 5 vice presidents wind up being presidents.
It's incredible.
I had no idea.
Nor did I.
But they didn't get much respect for a long time, so fill us in on that.
Right. So for us, it's really interesting because we did start out thinking about making this film because of the age of the candidates, when it was Biden versus Trump. But then as we started thinking about the implications of that and some of the statistical data that shows how often a vice president does have to step up in the case of infirmity of the president or all sorts of different conditions, we realized we really do, as a country, treat the vice presidency as a joke, as a punchline. And we thought, this, of all years, we should not do that. And we have to know who the people are who are standing next to the person at the top of the ticket.
Who said in your film, Consolation Prize without consolation? That was a great line. Who was that?
That was Lyndon B. Johnson.
It was?
That was Lyndon
But
B.
my
Johnson.
favorite line is the line you started with the woman who had 2 sons who disappeared. Fill in the blanks there. I thought that was a great line.
The lore is this woman talked about these 2 sons who were lost to her forever. One was lost at sea. never to be heard from again. One was lost at sea, the other became vice president.
I love that.
Right?
I love that one. Yeah.
And by the way, we should go, I assume most people at least know this fact. It's probably the only thing in the film that I knew beforehand. The vice president under the Constitution has virtually no responsibilities. He or she, in this particular case, they preside over the Senate so that if there's a tie vote, they break the ties. Harris has done, Vice President Harris, many a time. And they succeed or fill in for the president once the 25th Amendment came about, but succeed the president if he, based on our history, dies.
But
that's it, right?
That is it. But the thing that's so incredible is that you brought up the 25th Amendment, which is the crux of what our film revolves around. That didn't come into play until JFK was assassinated. Yeah. And so to think that we've had the Constitution for 200 years, and no one had thought about rules of succession until the 60s, like that's actually pretty incredible.
Can we start, one other thing that is, there's so many factoids in this that are incredible. How little, forget formal responsibility, how little respect so many vice presidents had. I hope I got this number right because I was falling asleep at this point. Not because of the film, it was late at night. Did you say that when, we're going to get to Rockefeller in a few minutes, when Spiro Agnew had to resign, and obviously ultimately there was the disappearance of Richard Nixon too, but before that it was Rockefeller, that the budget of the vice president's office when Nixon was Eisenhower's vice president was $48,000. Is that the right number?
I'll have to double check the number,
but
it
really
was astonishingly low. And it wasn't until Walter Mondale actually came in that the office became something more akin to what we're used to seeing now, where there's actually an office that is in the West Wing, that there is a budget, that there's staff, and that there's actually an expectation that the president will take on serious policy issues and a more robust and firm role.
That's the voice of Cameo George. She's an executive producer for American Experience. Their film on the vice presidency airs on October 1st at 8 p.m. With her is Raney Aronson-Rath, who runs Frontline. You allowed to say runs Frontline?
Sure.
Okay,
she
runs
runs
Frontline.
It. That's right.
And October 8th, the VP choice will also be on GBH2.
So Raney, tell us what you have found out, at least so far, that we might not know about Tim Walz or J.D. Vance.
I think the most important thing that we're doing in the film is we're looking at how they form their political ideologies, the way they think politically. So as opposed to telling their entire biography, we're really looking at where did they get their ideas from. In each case, their childhoods and their education and their life experience actually really shaped them. So what you're going to hear from are friends, family, people who know them well, and that's a really fresh take on these two people who oftentimes you're just seeing quick sound bites from, you're seeing them interpreted by other media. This way you can actually understand, okay, what is the trajectory of their life? How did they arrive at these points of view? And then what would that mean for all of us if they're sitting next to the president?
Well, one of the things after reading Vance's book a while ago, Hillbilly Elegy, which turned out to be nothing like I expected, I thought he was going to talk about how poor people get abused and neglected and all that kind of stuff. And he seemed to have such a disturbing childhood. I can't help think that unless he's gone through intensive therapy, and I don't know if he has, that he's a disturbed person as a grown-up. I mean, the mother threatened to kill him. The mother,
it's a good question for Raney.
The grandmother's got all these guns everywhere. I mean, didn't she try to set her husband on fire at one point or something?
I think the thing to remember about JD, regardless of his upbringing, and I think everyone could say this too, is that he does go to Yale.
Right.
He is very influenced by Peter Thiel and others who are in his circle as he goes forward in both his work that he does in Silicon Valley and then later his work that he does as a politician himself. And I think if you look at him as a character, as a person, yes, he had that childhood, he's owned it, he's talked about it, but then he really does do a pivot to think about like what does matter to him and what he believes is best. And so it's really important to look at J.D. Vance today, even though the book was about his childhood and his upbringing.
You don't think a lot of his weird views of today have to do with his weird upbringing? I don't know.
No comment. Right?
Okay, no comment.
Right.
Okay.
And, you know, just important to note that when we're doing political reporting, there is a variety of different points of view out there about each of these candidates. And so sometimes when someone's speaking, J.D. Vance, you could take him for example, he's speaking and some people will resonate with what he believes in. And
Yeah.
those are the things that we wrestle with in the film. You know, our job really as reporters is to put it out on the table. And then you decide, do you want to vote for a candidacy that has Trump and J.D. Vance, or do you want to vote for Harris, in the case of the choice, obviously, as well, and, of course, her running mate, who's Tim Walz.
How about him? Anything we don't...
So Tim is a very interesting character. I mean, the fact is, one of his gifts is communication, and we've really looked at him being a social studies teacher and his ability to talk to pretty much anyone across a partisan divide. We spent a lot of time in the film looking at his work that he did in his congressional district that was mostly conservative and how he tried to bridge the gaps there, especially with issues like Obamacare and other things like that. And that's a big part of his story that hasn't really been told. And I think it's really, really quite interesting to learn.
You know what I tell you I love that you just did? That you called them JD and Tim. I'm so sick of Harris being called Kamala by everybody in the media, or Kamala in the case of Trump, and referring to them by their last names. That really made me happy. Can we talk about your thing for a second? I hope I get the chronology right, because I had forgotten this. So Richard Nixon begins to get in trouble.
Yes.
And then after he begins to get in trouble, feel free to correct me, Spiro Agnew, former governor of Maryland, who is his vice president, starts to get in trouble. Is that right or no?
It's actually Spiro Agnew, since we're doing
Whatever,
first
yeah.
names. He starts to get in trouble. And
Even before?
Even before the news of Watergate begins to break. And one of the things that we talk about in the film that's so interesting in terms of the chronology is that the Attorney General is trying to get in touch with President Nixon, and they're
Is this Elliot Richardson at the time? Which attorney? Elliot Richardson?
Yes,
okay.
they need to talk, but they won't leave a message and explain why. And it turns out that it's because they've started to collect evidence about what's happening with Spiro Agnew.
Okay, so far I've gotten one thing wrong. Let me go to the next thing, see if I can get this wrong too. But then it becomes clear, since Nixon's in trouble, that they got to figure out how to get Agnew the hell out of there as quickly as possible, because otherwise, if Nixon does disappear, either impeached and convicted or resign, and there's a guy under criminal investigation in his home state of Maryland, there's a problem. So ultimately, a plea deal is cut. He doesn't go to jail. Agnew is gone. And then all of a sudden, we have who is the vice president of the United States?
We have Gerald Ford from the 5th District of Michigan, a man who, by all accounts, had no interest in running for the presidency. He had no interest in being vice president. In fact, he had told his wife and his family members that he was actually thinking about stepping down and not running for re-election in his own congressional district when he gets the call.
So he becomes president, and he realizes he's got to pick somebody to fill the hole. Here's that moment. Here's a clip from your film on American Experience, talking about the choice Ford made for VP, followed by archival tape of the announcement. Here it is.
Adding even more to the whole oddness of the situation, if you will, was that the first task Gerald Ford had as president was to choose a new vice president.
So he comes through the door now with his choice, and the choice, it is Nelson Rockefeller, the former governor of New York, who was leading the list of speculation among many people.
Yeah, and based on that sound, I didn't remember either. We didn't even know who the choice was till Rockefeller, the former governor of New York, walked through the door?
Until he walked through the door, everyone was peering, waiting to see who was going to walk through. So it really was, unlike now where there's speculation, there's the whole Veep stakes, who's it going to be? You're talking about the pros and cons of each of the potential candidates. This was a blank slate, and no one knew.
I figured it was a good move because he was so rich he wouldn't have to be doing any shenanigans on the side to make money, and Nelson Rockefeller came from a very wealthy family, as we recall.
He did. And there's one last thing, and then I'll shut up about this, that I thought was fabulously interesting. The Speaker of the House, who's next in line for the presidency, is Carl Albert.
Yes.
Now, he faces a couple of issues coming before him and a potential consequence based upon what he does. Explain what that was there, Cameo.
Carl Albert is an amazing figure in history who I really knew nothing about before the making of this film. We're in a situation, as you just set up, Richard Nixon has to step aside. His vice president has already had to step aside. So now there are 2 potential vacancies that are about to happen. Carl Albert, as Speaker of the House, is next in line. He is a Democrat. But Nixon, who had just won in a landslide, is a Republican. And so Carl Albert is presented with this moment where he can, as some of our experts talked about, stage a revolution and take over and instate himself as a Democrat.
Proceeds
as
with
the
impeachment
president.
and doesn't proceed with the confirmation of the vice president.
Could
and
have
he
been
becomes
him.
president of the United States.
We could have had President Carl Albert, but it's
incredible.
It's that period in history is absolutely unbelievable, amazing. We had a president and a vice president, neither of whom had run for election, had never received a single vote from the American public.
You know, Raney, I know you're doing...
That's incredible.
It is incredible.
It's just history we should all know, right? I just love it.
Yeah, I didn't know any of this stuff.
How many of the 51 vice presidents can any of the 3 of you name?
Oh, come on,
None
Jim.
of them, practically.
Oh, we could do all of them, and then we'll go off the air.
I'll tell you, I knew almost none.
But I also learned that Garfield, after he got shot, lingered for 88 days. I mean, that was incredible. I did not realize that either. You know what? One of the great scenes, though, I thought in your documentary, was the scene when Eisenhower is coming back home after recovering, I think, from his second heart attack. Mm-hmm. The crowds, the adulation, people cheering, the big welcome back Ike signs. I thought that was kind of sad because you would probably never see that
I had
anymore.
this discussion last night
You
that
did?
the candidates, their images, everything around them is so tightly managed, regardless of party, just where we are now in contemporary politics. You would never see that kind of moment of vulnerability. It's literally Ike in a wheelchair with a blanket over his lap, and he looks frail, he looks small, and we just would not have that experience today, I don't think.
I don't think so. I don't think so either. So, you know, I know you're doing biographies and not political analysis, Raney, but what's your sense from the reporting? Do people think this matters, that who the vice president is in terms of what happens with the election?
I do this time around. I feel like actually in the VP film, we do more political analysis than we did in The Choice. And the reason we did it is because so much is not known about what they both believe. So we really felt it was imperative to understand, especially in the final act, what does Tim Walz believe in? What has his voting record been? The same thing with J.D. Vance. Shorter voting record, obviously, right? But we're looking at it through the lens of what do they believe in? How are their political ideologies formed? And I do think people are incredibly curious about both these candidates. I think it has to do with the fury of the race, right? It is a neck-and-neck race. People are looking for what differentiates them, and they're looking at Tim and JD as very different people, right? They have very different ideas, represent different parts of this sort of American dream even, if you think about it. So I think that's what we really focus on. So you do see more politics in this film than you would have in The Choice.
But by the way, for people who don't see The Choice, I should just say, one of the
Choice is great.
Beyond how spectacular they are, is proof to me at least how fair you and your people are. Everybody talks to you. It doesn't matter
It's
who.
true.
Virtually everybody sits down for an interview, which speaks to the fact that they think they'll get a fair deal, which is hugely
No, I mean,
important.
that's huge, right? And that's the same thing with J.D. Vance and Tim Walz, is we have people from both sides of that aisle talking to us, family, friends, political analysts, you know, people who have looked at their lives in a more critical way, people who look at them and agree with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really important because that is America.
I know he announced very proudly that his mother had been 10 years sober at the Republican National Convention. Did you talk to the mom?
We didn't get to the mother.
Yeah, she wouldn't do it. Oh, well.
Maybe you can. Maybe you guys do.
Cameo, could you explain the 25th Amendment, which almost none of us heard of until Donald Trump was president, and there was some talk, unconfirmed, that cabinet members were talking about using Section 4, which no one really ever heard of, titled Declaration by the Vice President and Cabinet Members of a President's Inability to Serve. Forget that for a second. The other, Birchby, senator from Indiana, is that right? I think he was. How did the 25th Amendment come about to begin with?
So as I was talking about before, there was this moment when the country is deeply grief-stricken in the wake of JFK being assassinated live on television. And where we are politically as a country, there's the Cuban Missile Crisis. There are all of these things, remnants of the Cold War. The state of international relations is tense. America's role in the world is critical. And so when JFK is killed, suddenly, for the first time in more than 100 years, people actually come to grips with the fact that there is no actual documented rule of succession for what needs to happen.
That's incredible.
And so, as you're saying, Senator Bai and others are just like, we can't let this happen. And so there is a process where Congress people, led by him and others, academic experts, attorneys, come together and try to figure out, how do we map this out? Like, what should the rules be? Because all along it's been sort of a gentleman's agreement. We talked about Eisenhower when he's in the hospital. He and Richard Nixon basically have a handshake agreement that if something goes south with him, then Richard Nixon will step up. But people realize there are just so many things happening in the country of such major import that we can't just leave it up to a handshake agreement. And so the process for formulating an amendment begins.
You know, Raney, obviously we're here to talk about what you're doing in the Vice Presidents, but for people who haven't seen it, since it did win the Academy Award, and it was one of the most incredible pieces of journalism I've seen in quite some time, give people an idea of what 20 Days of Mariupol was about and how it came about.
Oh, thank you for asking, and thank you. So 20 Days in Mariupol was a film really told by journalists who were under siege in Mariupol with other people who were Ukrainian during the first 20 days of the war. And they were under siege. Obviously, Russians were coming in, and they stayed and they filmed. There was a point in which they could have left. They decided not to leave and stay. Then they wanted to leave, and they couldn't get out. So it's a really tense 20 days, and they filmed literally everything. These are news AP reporters, they're journalists, they're not filmmakers. But what I think happened is, because they had cameras and video cameras, they were able to essentially just cover it as if it was a documentary. We got involved because the AP came to us and told us, you know, what you're seeing in the news isn't the whole story. Would you like to look at the extended rushes, which are just really the footage? And we did. And within about 2 days said to them, we see a very important story to be told in documentary form. And then we spent a few months working with the AP reporter, especially Mstislav Cheranov, and created a film that was really remarkable and memorable. Michelle Meisner, who's with GBH and Frontline, edited it, and we worked on it in Boston, right here.
And I remember the scene at the beginning of the war that we all saw that was so upsetting about the maternity ward that was bombed.
That's what got our attention too.
Yeah.
You know, the maternity ward that was bombed, they were there when it was happening. They were able to profile the women who were affected, the children, the doctors. And so that's a really potent scene. Also, a lot of the people on the ground thought that that would really get international attention, and it didn't really, right? We all noticed it, but then the sort of trajectory of the war didn't change as much as they had hoped. Very personal story told by Mstislav himself, very on the ground. And then, of course, you see them escape. And that's one of the most dramatic scenes that I've ever seen filmed, where they're escaping with the Red Cross and others as they're trying to leave Mariupol, and they got out safely. And incidentally, right before them, another filmmaker had tried to leave, and he was killed. So it's really a potent and really important, ongoing, important story. We're working with them again.
Oh, good. Oh, great. They need help.
Well, and Joe Biden's just this morning making a plea at the UN for the people of Ukraine and support for their country. Can we spend one last minute or two talking about the vice presidency stuff? You know, do you both think when you're home, not, well, even at work, we talked about civic education and polarization the other day, and the polarization is just, as we all know, out of control, bad for democracy, bad for your mental health, bad for everything. And we posited, not an original notion, a lot of people have said it, is when you learn more about your government, learn how the system works, how it doesn't work, it maybe mutes some of the edges of that. Do you subscribe to that notion, Cameo? Because this really is a lesson. As I said, we learned, I'd say 90% of what we saw in this film, we had no idea was the state of the law or the Constitution. Do you subscribe to that?
I absolutely do. And I think that that's at the heart of our mission at American Experience, not just with this film, but all of the films that we do. There's so much about our government, about our country, that we just don't know. Highly educated people, where things, you gloss over them. And I think that if you have a deeper understanding and you have more context, based in history and government and civics, that you will have a better understanding of where we are today, of the politics that we're dealing with today. And, you know, a point that our filmmaker, Michelle Ferrari, made actually is that one of the things that struck her the most in making this film was a reminder that government can change, and these founding documents can change. That's the whole idea of amendments. And we think that we are, quote unquote, stuck with so many things, but actually you just need a chorus of people who have the motivation to do something, and then the stick-to-itiveness to actually carry it through. And that's the thing, like, there's a reason that we have amendments. Like, none of these documents are perfect.
How about you, Raney?
So it's interesting as Cameo is talking, and I don't want to speak for you at all, but I think a lot of us who are in public media are here because of the educational mandate of our programming.
Mm-hmm.
So our programs, Frontline, and many of our programs actually are seen in over 60% of the public educational schools across America.
I didn't know that.
And that
Wow.
is actually something that is for all of us deeply meaningful, that our work, our journalism is reaching younger people. And we're also, and I'll come hopefully and talk with you all about it, launching something called Frontline Short Docs, where we're making short documentaries. We're doing it this election season for younger people, especially people who are voting for the first time. They can go there and they can see shorter form documentaries.
On what kinds of things?
On the choice, to American families, and hopefully, if we can get it done, the VPs as well.
That's fabulous. That is really
I mean, they're
fabulous.
short. They're 5 or 6 minutes each, but we hope that that will encourage younger people to know their history, know who's they're voting for, understand more, without all the partisan noise and the sort of commercialized media around them.
Please do come back. Yeah.
See the quote from Zoe?
What's
Our
that?
producer says, "That's how I got here. Nova Frontline films in high school were a big reason
my
I
God.
studied journalism in college." So there you go.
Me too. I
There
mean,
you
that's
go.
how I learned about Frontline, was in a high school class.
Really?
So this is how, we didn't have a television at home.
Oh.
So this is literally an access point for many of us, and an ongoing, and maybe more important than ever, part of why our work has the reach that it has.
You know, one last thing before you go. I hadn't thought of this until you were both speaking about commitment to one's country and government and the peaceful transfer of power and whatever. One of the things from your film, Cameo, that we have all seen is the incredible picture when Lyndon Johnson is being sworn in on the plane. And what struck me, even though I've seen the photograph 5,000 times, is while his wife is standing to his right, as you'd expect, standing to his left is a woman who just experienced maybe the worst trauma that any human being can experience in their life, the wife of the executed president. And I assume, I mean, I haven't read as much about it as I should, it's because she knew what that moment meant to the country, despite what she had just suffered, no?
Right. They all knew. She knew that she had to be there, and that was part of the compact that she made with the American public. Lyndon Johnson knew that he had to be there, and despite his own grief as well, had to stand strong, had to say, "I'm willing to step into this role," and that with the quote, the famous quote, "With your help and with God's, that I will be able to carry out this duty." And so there really was a sense throughout, you know, regardless of your political affiliation, that, you know, we're doing this for a greater reason and a greater good.
Comes through.
And, you know, just reminded me in terms of Jacqueline Kennedy being able to see the importance of these kinds of things. You showed her getting off the airplane, still in the pink suit, still
with blood.
covered with blood, because she wanted people to see the blood on her clothing. Oh, God.
Can I say one last thing here? I hope this doesn't offend you, because the entertainment word in public media is sometimes anathema. Not only do we learn a huge amount from both of what you do, your films are really, I mean, many of the films, obviously some are so intense, but are entertaining too. And that is huge, because it, as you know better, that it keeps people's attention when they might wander. And
I don't think that's
both do it
offensive
brilliantly.
at
We're
all.
storytellers,
Well,
right?
that's exactly right.
I mean, we're journalists, but we're storytellers. We love a good story, right? And actually, when we're making decisions at Frontline, it is also story. You're looking for, and we were talking about this last night with J.D. Vance and Tim Walz in our Rough Cut session, what are the stories that you will never forget that are emblematic of who they are and their political views.
Well, there's a woman who agrees with you.
It's always in a story.
Standing right where you are, Doris Kearns Goodwin was there last week and said it's all about stories. That's the only thing you remember. It's the only thing you act upon.
It was ever
and she's
thus.
totally right, as are you. Congratulations to both of you.
Thank you very much,
Thanks so much.
for
Really
being
appreciate it.
here. Congratulations, too, on your great work. Cameo George is executive producer for American Experience, and Raney Aronson-Rath is editor-in-chief and executive producer of Frontline. And again, the film I mentioned before, 20 Days of Mariupol, if you haven't seen it, you really will learn a lot. It's a very moving film. Frontline's The VP Choice will premiere on October 8th at 10 p.m. on GBH2 and the Frontline YouTube channel. American Experience is terrific. The American Vice President premieres on October 1st at 8 p.m. on GBH2 and on the American Experience YouTube channel. Thank you very much again
Great to see you
for
both.
coming
Thanks.
in.
It was great.
Up next, I think, Marie St. Fleur, we think she's coming. We hope she's coming. Springfield and Haitian Americans in general has that on her community as a rally gets underway on Boston Common decrying the anti-immigrant and anti-Haitian rhetoric coming from.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, 25 years of Mamma Mia, the musical. Now with an anniversary tour playing in Boston, we talk to the unlikely woman who made it a hit, British director Phyllida Lloyd. She made a name for herself directing Shakespeare, but decided to take a chance on the ABBA-fueled, frothy production, and it made her, if not a dancing queen, a queen of the musical. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you and the International Conservation Fund in Boston, a charity working to avert climate change and biodiversity loss by partnering with NGOs and Indigenous peoples globally. More at internationalconservationfund.org. And Atlantic Design Center by Eldridge Lumber and Hardware, committed to helping you achieve your vision for a new kitchen or bathroom and guiding you from design to completion, with showrooms in York and Portland, Maine. AtlanticDesignCTR.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marge Regan, live at the library, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. Back here tomorrow and Friday. Hateful rhetoric about immigrants, specifically Haitian immigrants, has become a defining feature of Donald Trump's re-election campaign. Here's Trump's comments about Springfield, Ohio's Haitian population during the debate, followed by a guy, Jamie McGregor, who is CEO of McGregor Metal. It's a company based in Springfield, Ohio, via PBS's NewsHour.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets there.
I wish I had 30 more. Our Haitian associates come to work every day. They don't have a drug problem. They'll stay at their machine. They'll achieve their numbers. They are here to work. And so in general, that's a stark difference from what we're used to in our community.
To nobody's surprise, Trump and his VP candidate Vance continue to push fake stories, disinformation about immigrants coming for pets. Last night, about a new community of Haitian immigrants in Pennsylvania. Actually, that was Trump that did that. It's led to a series of bomb threats in Springfield, schools being closed, hospitals on shutdown, and unease in communities of hardworking, good people. What we haven't been discussing enough is the rich contribution by former state representative Marie St. Fleur, who is the first Haitian American to hold elected office in Massachusetts. She now runs St. Fleur Communications. Marie, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for being here.
Good to see you too, Jim. Thank you. Good to be here. Good to be here, Marjorie.
You know, we always talk about the large.
When they first immigrated, that's where they were. Boston was a great place to come. They wanted me to go to Catholic schools, and back in those days, Jersey wasn't accepting too many black kids in Catholic schools. Then this was a place where I could come, and ended up at St. Patrick's. So that was one reason. And many of them came for the universities that were here in order to attend. I mean, that was the first wave. If you were to different shores, usually it was Florida. A lot of it was New York. New York was where the place that hailed a lot of people, and eventually folks made it north. But I'm gotta say, Haitians have been coming here since the early 1800s. If you know Jean-Baptiste Pointe-du-Sable helped establish the city of Chicago. I always say to folks, somebody paid for my ticket here long before I got here.
By the way, Ed, today we have the third largest concentration of Haitians in the United States.
Yes,
Is
you
that
do.
not right?
That's absolutely
Can you,
right.
one of the things Marjorie and I've had to admit far too many times is embarrassment since the murder of George Floyd. about how many holes in our knowledge of black history in general in this country we have. We've learned a lot, and again, it doesn't undo the fact that we shouldn't have had to learn this late in our lives. Narrowing the focus, we were talking this morning, our knowledge of Haitian history in this country and the contributions Haitians and Haitian Americans have made was virtually non-existent until we're preparing for you and when you were here last time a few months ago. Fill in a blank or two of things you think people should know and don't.
Well, you know, when I was a kid, my father thought it was important that we learned about who we are. And so if you think about the Louisiana Purchase, there's no Louisiana Purchase without Haiti, a group of slaves deciding that they wanted their freedom. And at that time, we had 3 superpowers that were occupying that small rock. The British were there. They wanted to subdue the slaves. They weren't successful. The French were there. They hung around a little longer. They weren't successful either. They made us pay. Everybody's talking about reparations. Well, the French made Haitian slaves pay for reparations back in the late 1800s, right? Boyer ended up paying France for the privilege of my freedom. And then, of course, you had the Spanish, right? And the Spanish occupied Haiti as well. And then, you know, they had the separation of the island, because at that time it was Saint Dominique. Then it was split up between, then it became the Spanish took over one side and it became the Dominican Republic. The French kept on with the other side of the island. Now you have to understand, in the northern part was where the British had held. So a lot of the influence there, if you even take a look at some of the names, you have the influence of the British in the northern part of the country. And so when you think about the slaves that ended up there, so a lot of them came over because a lot of the French ran out of Haiti because of the revolution that was starting there, ended up in Louisiana and that whole section of the United States. And then one sad was, and this is really rough history, guys. So you know, so you had a lot of the Africans, folks of African descent, hail from that part of the Caribbean. Now let's move a little further up. Now World War II happens, right? Take a step back.
I knew you would.
Right? Before World War II, Haiti gets established. They're still fighting to be recognized, right? Because you got to think about it. Jim Crow is being established in this country. There's a real push. The southern states do not want the blacks to be free. And here's this country on the tip of the United States all these black folks decided, no more, you're not going to hold us in slavery. We're going to free ourselves. And so, by the way, Africans were talking to each other. We didn't have cell phones, but we communicated. We're able to communicate. So Africans from that island and Africans from the south were in communication. Folks don't believe it, but they were. And so you had a lot of disturbances happening, called the guerrilla warfare, people trying to be free that were happening before that. So you push forward. There's they get out of the Louisiana Purchase, the Battle of Savannah. A lot of Haitian slaves, again, blacks, who's fighting in the Savannah? Haitian slaves fighting for the freedom of the Union, right here in the United States. There's a statue in the middle of Savannah, Georgia, recognizing the contributions of the Haitians in that war. Keep forward, keep forward again. I could keep going, but the beautiful thing is while we're fighting our own wars, America comes, you know, if you remember, John Adams wasn't too happy about these black folks becoming free. And honestly spent a lot of time trying to kill the economy in Haiti during the time. They actually quit any exchange, because if Haiti was called La Perle des Antilles, which was the Pearl of the Antilles, because it was the plantation. This island was a huge plantation that was producing the most sugarcane, indigo, you name it. It was being produced there for the benefit of the French. And so when that ended, and so it was selling to the United States and was selling to the other countries in that area. So when Toussaint Louverture, Dessalines, and all of them decided to take the freedom, they killed the trade with that, because they didn't want to trade with any black folks. They didn't want to trade with the slaves. They killed them. They killed the exchange of the opportunity to actually build infrastructure, raise funds, and create an economy on that island got killed. And then one of the cute things that happened is John Adams decided, well, when the Haitian good was created, he would flood it. He would flood the Haitian market with false Haitian dollars and help kill the economy that way too. Fast forward. We're into World War II, and we need folks to help fight in World War II. And so where do they go? They decided that they wanted help, and you know, if you remember, blacks were still fighting in the United States, were still fighting for recognition, for their freedom, for their dignity here. Africans were still fighting across, and blacks could not, we still couldn't come, sit with no public transportation, couldn't walk into a place like this and eat, couldn't be served. My kids couldn't go to school, right? Public schools were not open to us. We couldn't come in and walk into public schools. We weren't allowed into universities, what have you. We had to create our own. Churches wouldn't allow us into their spaces. And so, but here it is, we needed bodies for World War II. We got a bunch of, you know, which again led to the desegregation happened first in the United States Army than it ever did in the United States Civil Society. But there we were in Haiti again, and we were able to recruit from the Haitian Army at the time. They first, a class of 6, they were going to train fighter pilots in order to go to World War II. And there were 2 classes from the Haitian Army that came to the United States, that trained in the South to fight with the United States in World War II.
So the reward for all those contributions decades later is a former president who wants to be president again lies about people who are legally in this country, who, as we just heard from the president of that company, are making huge contributions in that community. What happened? We know the suffering that people, Haitians, Haitian Americans, and non-Haitians in Springfield are going through. And I have to say I'm heartened by the fact that some rock-ribbed Republicans who even support Trump have said the right thing and done the right thing to protect their fellow community members. What kind of spillover does that kind of rhetoric have on the larger Haitian American community beyond the borders of Springfield, Ohio, Marie?
You know, I think every community where there's a Haitian presence right now is feeling it. You can't help it, right? You can't walk into a space and not feel that people are looking at you funny because of what somebody else is saying. You know, I'm lucky, so removed, because you get to be removed. But if I am I'm somebody who's a health aide, who now has to walk into these spaces, who will walk into the hospitals right now trying to take care of people. If I'm a kid in school today, if I'm a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old walking into schools today and having your community being discussed that way, and kids could be so nice, you know that, right? I mean, the things that they'll say, they'll hear it from their parents, they communicated it, and they don't understand that the hurt that they're creating. And so for us, at least here, it's that. I think the Boston Public Schools have to pay particular attention to what's happening to young people in schools right now. I don't know. And then that's a very good question. They have to pay particular attention to particularly teenagers right now in terms, because that is where altercations will happen.
And even if it doesn't happen, the anticipation that it might happen because of what adults are saying
that's right.
about,
It's fight or flight, right? Because that remains with you. But in Springfield, they're being attacked. Right? The people, I mean, their lives have been disrupted. Folks who Springfield, I met a gentleman who's from Springfield, African-American gentleman, who said there was nothing there. And so they wanted people to come. In fact, they looking for people to come because a lot of these small towns in the United States have lost many of its population, and they needed to build it back. And so those folks came and were building community back. And so,
and by the way, it shouldn't matter, but the vast majority are here legally.
They're absolutely
despite what
here
Vance and Trump are saying.
But so here's the other thing. I don't spend a lot of time on that gentleman. Both of them, because they're not worth it, because it is a distraction that is created to do just that. It's not the first time that we've used those tropes in this country, and we'll continue to use it. Ethnic discrimination is not new. In this country. I mean, I think if I grew up in an Irish Catholic community, there was there. The Italians have experienced it, the Polish have experienced it, the Jews have experienced it. What's particular about Haitians is that we get two. It's a twofer. You get to have the ethnic issue, and you also get to be black in this country, where there's structural, written in law, structures in order to prevent you from being able to equitably enjoy the benefits of our democracy. So that's the double whammy.
We only have a few seconds left here, Marie St. Fleur, but tell people who are concerned about this what they might be able to do to show some solidarity here.
One, if you hear it, stand out again. Say something. Yeah. I think it was Niemeyer who said that, they came for one and then we said nothing. Then there was nobody left when they come for you, because that's the way it works. You know, we can forget, maybe you forget what happened to your ancestors, but for somebody standing up for them, you wouldn't enjoy the freedom that you're enjoying today. Say something. That's all. And the other thing is vote, people. America only asks us to do one simple thing. We are so blessed, and we don't appreciate it because we get to sit here and be so relaxed and think the world is going to continue to revolve around us. Only one thing as a citizen of the United States that you're asked to do. Vote. That's it. Do it.
On that note,
thank you
you
very
can take
much.
a breath now, Marie. St. Fleur, I want you to know. We're really glad you spent some time with us. Thanks so much.
Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Marie St. Fleur, as Jim said at the beginning, is the first Haitian American elected to the state legislature of Massachusetts, and we very much appreciate her time giving us a little history lesson about Haiti then and Haitians in America all through the years. Thank you very much for coming in.
And she's lucky to have escaped the legislature, too. We should have said that, by the way. Oops.
Okay, up next, our text segment of the day, the banana and you. What would life be like
These segues are
without the banana, the beloved banana? And do you fear the dreaded banana fungus, Jim? We'll explain it all next and read your text. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Aronson-Rath. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, local Haitians and their allies are rallying in Boston today to push back against racist lies being invented and spread by top Republicans. We'll look at why illegal betting is still thriving in Massachusetts over a year after sports betting was legalized. And the Boston Celtics are speaking to the media as they get ready to start their season and defend their NBA title. That's starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you and the University of Massachusetts Amherst, the Commonwealth's flagship public university. You can learn more about research, innovation, and economic impact for the Commonwealth at umass.edu. And the Boston Speakers Series, with its new season starting soon at Symphony Hall. 7 evenings featuring Liz Cheney, Supreme Court correspondent Nina Totenberg, and historian Annette Gordon-Reed. Information at bostonspeakersseries.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. It's time for our text segment of the day. We've been soliciting your thoughts on the global threat nobody is talking about except us, the Fusarium wilt of the banana.
Yes.
That's right, Marjorie. Your smoothies, your peanut butter and banana sandwiches are at risk. I, for one, got so worked up about this. When Marjorie walked into the studio this morning with her customary banana for breakfast, I took it from her, ate the last bite. I may have done that before I knew that there was a fungus, but that's besides the point. The bananas we eat today are of a scientifically modified variety created decades ago to combat a different strain of fungus. And the fungus has evolved, putting our current Cavendish bananas, that's the main one, who cares, at risk. So the bananas and you,
who cares?
Marjorie loves them.
I do.
If I never had another one, that'd be too soon.
You just ate one this morning for breakfast.
I know, I had nothing else in the house. So what is they're tasteless. The only thing good about a banana is you can buy like 11 pounds for $1.
Okay.
Other than that, forget them. What are the texts
Well, I
saying?
think a lot of people are very attached
What are they
to
saying?
bananas. Just had a banana right before you brought up the topic. Without bananas for my breakfast fruit, we would be living in a banana-less republic.
Oh, it's very sad.
Very, very, very
That's a good
sad.
line, banana-less
Yes, Mary
republic.
from Nahan is very concerned about banana daiquiris or lack thereof.
Mhm.
And Debbie from Cambridge says, I'm making a smoothie right now which contains a banana. Of course, a dull and soulless smoothie. Without one, please save the banana. And Dave from Concord says, I get my daily bananas listening to the Jim and Marjorie show. Ha,
Well,
ha, ha,
that's a good
ha.
one. Anonymous texter. I have one banana that this is like me. It travels back and forth with me to work every day. I bring it as part of my lunch, but it's always the least appealing item in my lunch bag, so I ignore it. At the end of the week, I usually compost it because it's too ripe to eat. Apparently, I like the convenience of the banana, but not the taste. I can
wanna
relate to
tell
that.
the anonymous texter, if your bananas get too ripe, you put them in the freezer,
And then you put them
peel
in a
put them
smoothie,
in
I
the
know.
freezer, and they will last. If you want to make banana bread or have a smoothie, I put a lot of frozen bananas in my smoothies. But
Can I
you know,
ask you a question?
I
I'm
just
a
wanna
little
mention,
insulted.
The Cavendish banana is in trouble, apparently.
know.
And this other one called, I can't even pronounce what the other one is called.
So don't.
But there are also red bananas.
There are?
Little teeny bananas. There are hairy bananas, Jim. They are pink and hairy.
What do you mean hairy?
Well, they're hairy. They have hair
The
on the
skin or
outside.
the banana?
skin,
Oh, the outside.
skin
I can
itself.
live with that. Okay.
Yeah, and you know what? It's not a tree. It's an enormous herb, this story says.
What is?
The banana. It's
Did you see
banana
Zoe
tree.
showing us bananas grow up?
They grow up. Yeah,
Did you know that?
I didn't know that. No,
That's
I
upsetting.
didn't know that. But the tree. So that it's not a tree. It's an herb. So I learned that today.
You know what I'm a little insulted about?
What?
You're bragging about your own banana connection. Who invented the melted banana on overnight oats? Who invented that?
Well, you claim to.
I
Jim,
did.
Have done
That's
that.
correct.
Yeah, it's very good. You melt the banana on top.
On the microwave,
I
yes.
probably 3 days a week eat a peanut butter banana sandwich.
I know that.
And the days I don't eat the peanut butter banana sandwich, I make a smoothie in which I have at least
Oh,
one,
wow.
or if not two bananas, because it's true. A smoothie is nothing, Jim, without a banana.
So you're like a banana woman, is what you're basically saying.
I really like bananas very much. Yeah, it's my favorite.
Thank you. I have no idea who that is, but thank you for joining the show. You have anything else to say about bananas?
Should we leave with Seinfeld talking about bananas?
Sure, let's hear it.
George Costanza loves bananas, but according to his father, they should go on the side of the Jell-O, not
with him.
in the Jell-O.
Here it is.
Georgie, would you like some Jell-O?
Why'd you put the bananas in there?
George likes the bananas!
So let him have bananas on the side!
I'm with the father. There it is. That's it on the
Okay.
banana.
Don't worry. I think the scientists are working to make sure that the bananas will not be extinct. Just have to make sure you don't get banana fungus.
Do you know they
And
grew
it's
up?
a climate change
Do
thing.
you know they grew up?
What?
Did you know
I did
they
not-
grew
I
up
did not
rather than
know
down?
They grew up. No,
How's
I-
that possible?
I thought they grew down, but what do I know? I thought
do
it
you
was a
know?
banana plant or
What
a
do I
banana
know?
tree. In fact, it's neither. Anyway,
There it is.
You're done with that. Thanks for all your texts on this crucial issue. Coming up after the 1 o'clock news, we're going to talk to CNN's John King, the latest polls, the latest self-described news on the self-described curve. Mark Robinson, John.
The Moth is returning to Boston this October for live storytelling, and GBH has your tickets to see it. It's true, immersive stories told live at the Wilbur Theater. Learn more and reserve your tickets now at gbh.org/moth.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Boston Medical Center, committed to delivering medical excellence that empowers all patients. Learn more about how BMC's team of experts is rewriting cancer care, sickle cell care, and beyond at bmc.org. And Liberty Mutual Insurance. Liberty believes progress happens when people feel secure and exists to help people embrace today and pursue tomorrow. Learn more at libertymutual.com.
I'm Jamie Bologna, executive producer of Boston Public Radio, and this is 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you.
Self-checkout woes and accidentally forgetting to scan a bunch of asparagus is ever warranted?
NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. In his fourth and final speech to the United Nations, President Biden sought to strike an optimistic note while also warning that the world remains at an inflection point. Here's NPR's Asma Khalid.
The president addressed the wars in Ukraine, the Middle East, and Sudan, and said he knows that many look at the world today and see despair and want to retreat, but he does not.
Our task, our test, is to make sure that the forces holding us together are stronger than those who are pulling us apart.
Biden called on world leaders to work together to end the wars and take on other challenges like climate change and artificial intelligence. He also spoke about the difficult decision to end his bid for a second term and said that some things are more important than staying in power. Asma Khalid, NPR News.
A new national survey of voters under 30 shows significant support.
50% support with young men. Elena Moore, NPR News, Washington.
At a Pennsylvania rally yesterday.
Oh, he wants to be their protector. Well, I am. As president, I have to be your protector.
This hour, Trump addresses a campaign rally in Savannah. A former Green Bay Packers star quarterback Brett Favre says he has Parkinson's disease. A Hall of Famer discloses illness as he was testifying before a congressional committee investigating fraud and shortcomings in welfare programs for families. Favre defended his role in a Mississippi COVID relief scandal while claiming that he was also a victim of fraud.
I also lost an investment in a company that I believed was developing a breakthrough concussion drug I thought would help others. And I'm sure you'll understand why it's too late for me, because I've recently been diagnosed with Parkinson's.
He's been accused of improperly using political connections to redirect public money to his alma mater, the University of Southern Mississippi, and his own pocket. You're listening to NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Details have emerged on the arrest of Hampden County Sheriff Nick Cochee.
Plea admitting there were enough facts to convict him. He was granted a continuance without a finding and will also have his driver's license suspended. For the New England News Collaborative, I'm Adam Freinier.
Worcester City Councilor George Russell calling on the city's manager to install full body scanners at the entrance to Worcester City Hall. Worcester City Council meets tonight to consider the motion and whether it wants these scanners to be installed before the last day of the year. Russell says these scanners would be like the ones that they use at Polar Park and Worcester District Court. At both locations, guests go through the scanners to check for any dangerous items before entering the facility. Cloudy mid-60s today, cloudy and 50 overnight. Rain likely tomorrow and Thursday. 66 degrees in Boston right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Capital One, offering their travel card, Venture. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. Details at CapitalOne.com. And the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation at rwjf.org.
It's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Yegan. Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, as we do every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. We are now joined by the pride of Dorchester on Zoom and a few other places too. That'd be John King, CNN's chief national correspondent, behind 2 great reporting projects this election cycle, all over the map in the battleground. John King, it's good to see you.
Happy Tuesday, 6 weeks from tonight.
6 weeks, yep.
Yes, 6 weeks from tonight. We just saw a headline on your station at CNN, which we have on here, saying basically the race is too close to call.
We have a new national poll out today, and you've heard me for years say, look at national polls, but don't run to Vegas on a national poll. We pick presidents state by state. But we have a national poll, which gives us a look at least at the big dynamics. And yes, it is essentially a dead heat. If you look at the national poll, which tells you it's going to come down to 5 or 6 of the battleground states. What's striking to me in this poll, we've seen a very close competitive race for some time since Biden got out and Harris got in and boosted the morale of the Democratic base. What really jumps out at me is that Trump has an 11-point lead in this national poll when you ask voters, which candidate do you trust to handle the economy? And we know that's the number one issue. So he has an 11-point lead on the number one issue, and yet she is tied.
That's a great
point. So what does that tell you? It tells you she has a problem. She has a problem. She needs to narrow that gap. But it also tells you that it is very clear to me when you look at this that a lot of people out there don't want Donald Trump back. They're just not sure the vice president is up to the job, especially on the economy.
But having said that, the trend obviously is towards her. Does that matter? Meaning if you compare even her early time as the nominee with today, there is movement in her direction, not immense, but movement nevertheless. That is indicative of something, or it is not?
I'm not sure that's the case anymore. So we have these national polls where, yes, she has moved up into a tie with Trump. Maybe she's a point ahead, maybe she's a point behind. The thing about when you see any polling, if you can average them, that's the best way to do it, because any one poll is a snapshot in time. But if you look at the New York Times Siena battleground polling yesterday, again, just one poll. But in the Sun Belt states of North Carolina, Georgia, and Arizona, those were Trump's best numbers in quite some time. So did they catch a bounce toward Trump, or did they just get a good day toward Trump, right, in the polling responses? So I would be careful. There was definitely momentum for Harris when Biden got out, when she clinched the nomination, heading into the Democratic convention, and maybe a little bit after. I would argue, looking at all the numbers I look at, and I probably look at too many numbers, Jim, is that I would say it's kind of plateaued, that it's kind of, it's okay, here we go. And we're very competitive. And, if you average the North Carolina polls, it's a dead heat. Maybe she has a slight advantage. If you average the Georgia polls, maybe Trump has a slight advantage. If you average the Arizona polls, maybe Trump has this. I would say Trump does have a slight advantage. The blue wall states, Pennsylvania is tied. Harris has a tiny advantage in Michigan and Wisconsin. So this is it's so tiny with 6 weeks to go that we're just in for a long night, I believe, unless something breaks. And I also think we should start now having this conversation. Remember how long it took in 2020? It took until Saturday to know the winner.
Yeah.
This is going to take several days. It's not exactly the same as it was in 2020 when you had the pandemic, but you still have this, that changed how people vote, to mail-in votes, to show up early, in-person early voting, election day voting. You have this hybrid voting now. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. There's somebody out there who suggests there is from time to time. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but it will take longer, especially if the race is very close, to be able to declare winners. And I think that's going to stretch at least into Thursday of election week and perhaps even longer.
Yeah, we're going to talk in a second about how long it could take in Georgia if they're hand counting ballots. But I wanted to mention to you something that I've seen. There was a piece in the Globe today about Sean O'Brien, head of the Teamsters. The Teamsters didn't endorse this time, and they have traditionally endorsed Democrats. But Sean O'Brien says the reason, or part of the reason anyway, he didn't is because his membership is for Trump, which underscores her problems with white working class men. She's done worse than Biden with white working class men. She's a woman, she's a black woman. What do you think?
I think you just said it quite eloquently and simply, which is the way it needs to be said, that this is part of her challenge, right? And, why are we having this conversation in, the year 2024? I wish we weren't, but we are. That she will face some of the sexism, misogyny, call it what you will, that Hillary Clinton faced in 2016. And she faces additional questions because she's a woman of color, and we've never had a woman of color as president of the United States. He faces questions, too, about character. I mean, I just came back from Georgia. I was in Nevada the week before, and there are a lot of voters who, on certain issues, would lean Trump, and then they just say, I can't do it. I can't look my kids in the eye and say, be like him. So I won't do it. So they each have their strengths and their weaknesses. But in the case of the Teamsters, there is, we used to, what's the term we used to, it's guns and gays, right? Or and things like that. There are cultural issues that have divided the labor movement. Vice President Harris can look any union member in America in the eye and say that she's part of an administration that has been the most pro-union, certainly in time. Certainly in my lifetime. I've been in Washington for 36 years. Without a doubt, the Biden-Harris administration has been that. And so if you're talking about the right to organize, fighting for higher wages, joining people on the picket line, on those uniquely labor issues, this is not a contest. However, you have that problem. And so is it about guns? Is it about social and cultural issues? Is it about the fact that she's a black woman? You'd have to go voter by voter on that one. But the Teamsters did take a poll of their members, and there is a divide. And so the leadership decided we're going to punt here. You do see, just today, you see a lot of the deputies in the Teamsters working for Harris. The Black Caucus within the Teamsters Union and some of the state organizations, especially in the big battleground states, they're for Harris. So we're going to watch this play out in the final weeks because that is about, they have everybody has contact now through, cell phones and texting and constant messaging and all the like. But those unions do have a little extra juice with their own members. And so we'll watch. It's really a fascinating question for me as we get into these final weeks and how that plays out.
On CNN, as you're speaking to us, is a screen that says, "Shame on her," in quotes. Senator Manchin says he won't endorse Harris, and the great sin that she has committed is she said she would support gutting the filibuster to protect abortion rights. My analysis, John, I know you're not an editorialist, but I'm allowed to be, is Joe Manchin is upset because he hasn't been on the news in a couple of months like he was every day when he was the key vote along with Kirsten Sinema from Arizona there. What's the potential impact in a state where Trump is going to win by a lot, I assume? What's the impact of Manchin's position beyond West Virginia's borders, if any?
I don't think it's very great. I'm going to cut the senator a little bit of slack in that you're right. He's an attention-seeking missile on many occasions. That's a fair. That is a fair statement. But he also has been very consistent as somebody in the middle about how important he thinks the filibuster is, because the threat of being able to just drag on a debate forever does force people to get into a room and make compromises sometimes, way less than it used to. So I'm not sure he can make that argument with the full moral authority he used to make it. But he has been very consistent that he thinks it's a mistake to get rid of that. So that is a principle of his that he has stuck with consistently. Does Joe Manchin have a lot of influence on a voter in suburban Philadelphia or Macomb County, Michigan, or outside of Phoenix, Arizona? They're going to decide this election? I don't think so. When you have a Democrat on television saying, I can't vote for the Democrat, maybe there's a little bit of that. There are a whole lot of Republicans on television saying they can't vote for Trump either, so I would call it a wash at best. I don't think he has much influence outside of West Virginia, and guess what? She's going to lose West Virginia.
So let's return to what Marjorie touched upon in passing, an attempt by the Trump people to change the rules of how people vote. Well, not really how they vote, but how their votes are counted. They failed in Nebraska. Please tell us what they failed at. And they succeeded, at least so far, subject to court challenges in Georgia. Take us through both states, if you would, John King.
Well, in Georgia, the new election commission wants to hand count votes, which will slow down the process. And it just, again, adds this element of there must be something wrong, right? We need to hand count the ballots because we can't trust these people. Again, I've been doing this for nearly 40 years, and the men and women, whatever party they're from, they get paid nothing who do this. There's just zero evidence. These are citizens who are doing the Lord's work in our democracy, and it is frustrating to me as a citizen and as a journalist who's watched this process for years to see people attack them constantly because there's just zero evidence, none. In the case of Nebraska, they wanted to, Nebraska and Maine are the two states that award electoral votes, both based on congressional district, and the Omaha area congressional district is a Democratic-leaning district. And so, Joe Biden won that district in 2020. And with the map today, with the map as it is today, if Kamala Harris wins the blue wall states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and that one vote out of Nebraska, that's 270. That's exactly 270. She's the next president of the United States. So the Trump people want to take that away. The time to do that was a year ago, or at least 6 months ago. I'm going to propose today, Jim, that the Red Sox are a wild card team because we're going to stop the count at the All-Star break. No, we're not going to count the second half of the season because I don't like the way it went. And so that's what Trump is doing here. I don't like the way that place votes, and now I see how competitive this race is. So every one electoral vote just might matter. So I'm going to change the rules, 6 weeks before the election. If you want to have a debate about changing the rules, let's have a debate about anything. This is America. Let's have a debate. But I think most people, it would poke at your sense of fairness to think, the election's in 6 weeks. I don't like this, so I'm going to change the rules. And so one senator, former Democrat turned Republican, they need his vote, stood up and said, no, we can't do this. If you want to talk about it after the election, great. If you wanted to talk about it a year ago, great. To do it right now is ridiculous, and it sounds like it's shady, and I'm not going to do it.
John, can we go back to Georgia for a second? I get nervous saying what I'm about to say, considering the expertise of the person I'm talking to, so feel free to tell me I am wrong. My anxiety about Georgia is not the ultimate outcome, but the short-term outcome. It's a neck-and-neck race. Georgia's decision has not been announced. Georgia will decide, hypothetically, who the next president is. And here's the part where I'm not sure I'm on sturdy turf. That hand counting in smaller rural districts is an easier proposition. It's much more likely those votes go to Trump. They're all counted, for argument's sake, on election night. And before everything else is counted in urban areas, which are more likely to be for Harris, Trump announces he's the president of the United States because he's won Georgia. And of course, the end of the story is 3 days later, all the urban votes are counted. Harris wins Georgia, and she's the legitimate president. Is that a legitimate fear, or am I missing something?
It's a very legitimate fear. It happened in 2020. Donald Trump came out that night and said he won the election, and he didn't win the election. He came out that night and said it was time to stop the count. We don't do that in a democracy. We don't stop the count. No Democrat can say that. No Republican can say that. No independent can say that. The reason we're here is because we count votes. That's what makes America, this beacon. There are other democracies around the world, but this is what we do. And so, yes, you have every right to fear that. And again, that's why I said we should start conditioning our audience, as many times as we can, that this is likely to take several days again. There's nothing wrong with that. We're counting votes, and the process is complicated. And when you have people like Trump and his people in the states screaming, everybody's cheating, then you need more people in the room to watch it. And sometimes that slows it down. If somebody legitimately says, can we take another look at that ballot? Are we sure that is filled out right? Are we sure that person's eligible to vote? There are some fair questions in this process, too. Some of what people are saying is just grossly unfair, and it's paranoid, and there's no facts to support what they say. There's been massive fraud in the past, therefore we have to have this process today. The massive fraud part in the past is just bogus. It is. But there are ways to do this. I think you've seen some election boards around the country Pinal County, Arizona comes to mind, saying, you know what, if everyone's going to question us, we are going to turn a spotlight. We're going to put more cameras in. We're going to put more glass on the rooms. We're going to let you watch us. We're going to bring people in and watch us. We're going to count the votes fairly. When it comes to Georgia, there'll be some Democrats in Georgia, on the Stacey Abrams campaign, supporters in particular, who won't agree with what I'm about to say. But I think we saw in the last presidential election, the Secretary of State there and the Republican governor there, both Republicans, the Secretary of State and the Republican governor, stand up for the integrity of their process. And Joe Biden won the state. So I guess I'm less worried about the end result, but I completely share the idea that it's very possible that at midnight, as Tuesday turns to Wednesday, November 5th turns to November 6th, that Donald Trump comes out yet again and says, I win, stop the count. That's not the way it works. It didn't work that way in 2020, and it will not work that way in 2024.
We're talking to John King from CNN.
So, John, Kamala Harris has accepted a debate with you guys at CNN in October. If Trump doesn't show, what do? Do you have any plan, or is it kind of like seat of the pants? I mean, do you just have her interviewed by herself, or an empty chair, a la Clint Eastwood years ago at one of the conventions where he had the empty chair out on the stage? How do you handle that?
The empty chair. The Clint Eastwood. We can invite Clint Eastwood. Look, that one's above my pay grade. I do think that we should have opportunities for all of the candidates to have town halls if they won't do debates. Now, some people out there would say you're putting your thumb on the scale. You're not if you offer it to everybody. I think, I think that ABC did a pretty good job with their debate. I think CNN did a very good job with our debate. I think they were both good debates to have. And I think one of the criticisms you get, or one of the concerns you get from voters, is why can't you spend more time on climate? Why can't you spend more time on healthcare? Why can't you spend more time on taxes and spending, and a whole host of other issues out there that people care about? So I do think that gives you the value if the candidates are willing to do a town hall and maybe deliberately say up front, we're going to talk about fewer topics because we want to air it out and let it breathe a little. So we'll see what happens if Trump does not come to the CNN debate. And some other networks have proposed debates as well, and they have every right to do so. At the moment, I don't see another debate. And I'll give you my calculation why, is that, number one, Trump lost that debate, and he lost it quite convincingly. He's saying quite the contrary, but he knows he lost that debate, and he lost it quite convincingly. He does not want to lose to her again. The reason she wants more debates is to how we started this conversation. She's very competitive right now. People at the first debate did see her at least as Trump's equal and as a president, right? One of the things I hear a lot in my travels from people who really don't want to vote for Donald Trump, but who want the border closed and might want their taxes cut, or at least have this nostalgic memory of the pre-COVID Trump economy, is, well, at least he's done the job, right? Yeah. And they've learned how to block the other stuff out. So a debate, she wants another debate, her team wants another debate for the stature thing, that she's a president too, right? She's standing next to a former president, she's a president too. Again, if you look at our poll, Trump has an 11-point edge on the economy. He has a 14-point edge on immigration. He has a 7-point edge on foreign policy. Issues aside, I process that as even people who don't agree with him on everything say he's been president. He knows what the job entails. I don't know enough about her to say I could say that about her. That's why she wants more debates. To present herself as an equal or better on the big issues of being a president.
John, since you were kind enough to confirm my worry about Georgia, I
hope it doesn't turn out that way, but
well, I do too. Well, let me tell you something else I'm worried about that you can maybe either confirm or disabuse me. I know Jill Stein a little bit from a ballot campaign I did in 1990 where she was actually very helpful, a tax ballot question, which is the first time I met her. Since then, she's run for state rep and lost. She's run for governor, gotten very few votes, run for president. But we looked up this morning, I know you know this, but I wasn't sure. When you combine votes in Wisconsin, when Hillary Clinton was running, of third-party candidates, I think it was Gary Johnson, I'm not sure who it was, but Gary Johnson and her, the margin of Trump's victory there was less than the number of votes they got. So I guess my question is, are the third-party candidates that have basically receded, particularly once RFK decided to get out of the race, except where it would be helpful for him to stay on the ballot, are the Steins and the Wests and the others of concern to, I guess, the Harris campaign in some of these really tight states like the Rust Belt?
Yes, absolutely. And the one state I would point out more than any is Michigan, because Jill Stein has gone out there repeatedly into Dearborn, the Arab American community, and directly appealed for their votes and directly criticized Harris and the Biden administration for its support of Israel and continuing to send weapons to Israel throughout the the conflict with Hamas. And so if you look at the national polls, Chase Oliver is the Libertarian candidate, Jill Stein is the Green Party candidate. In most national polls, that's now down to about 2 or 3% combined. One gets 2 and one gets 1. So nationally, it's not as big of an impact, although I would argue in a 50-50 race, it has the potential, right? It has anybody who's getting above 1% does have the potential. Trump has a ceiling in a lot of these states of around 48%. Maybe it's 49%. But Harris needs to get above that. So anything that's tugging at that affects her. It's much different. The third-party candidates are having much less influence since Kennedy dropped out. And Kennedy, of course, dropped out after a whole bunch of stories that were starting to implode his support anyway. But I would say in this, you're right about if you talk to Hillary Clinton about this, she will tell you, she'll also say Pennsylvania, but the blue wall. She'll say she lost the blue wall because of the third-party candidates. In this campaign, because I've been to Michigan so many times, and you have the combination of the youth vote and the Arab American vote, that's where Jill Stein is a giant threat. Nationally, no, but in 1 or 2 of these battleground states, absolutely.
Talking to John King from CNN.
We're getting a lot of people that are mad at Sean O'Brien here that are texting in. And one gentleman says, I'm with the United Brotherhood of Carpenters Union. Most of the members I speak to are pro-Trump when they actively acknowledge he is not for unions, so I have no idea why. And on the 11-point spread you said Trump has on the economy, in one of those polls you just referenced, John, some of our texters are suspicious. They think that that's not really about the economy. It may be about something else, like not wanting a woman or a black woman to be president.
Well, what's it matter what the motivation is?
I think it's possible. I think that's possible. Some of it's that. But I'll tell you from my travels, Jim and Margie, I think it's flip the word economy, set that aside, and put in cost of living.
Yeah.
And I think that people, again, you can have an economist come in and say, maybe the Biden spending right after COVID ticked up, participated in inflation, just like the Trump tax cuts might have juiced the economy. He inherited a great economy from Barack Obama. Trump tax cuts probably juiced it. They also exploded the deficit. You can have an economist come in and go through all these things way smarter than I am. But when you travel and talk to people, you will have even small business people who are voting for Harris say, my supply costs are still high.
Yep.
And I can't pass that on to my customers. You will meet with families who are actually doing pretty well in good union jobs, say in Las Vegas, right? Who've had a third kid and they can't get a bigger house. Even though their property values have gone way up and they can make a nice profit on their house, they can't buy in the same neighborhood because the bigger houses have gone up in value too, and interest rates are still high, and they can't afford to move up in their own neighborhood, and they like their schools and they like their neighbors. So there's different layers of cost of living in different parts of the country, and I think a lot of people who live in Washington and New York who live comfortable lives don't process this as much as they need to. As the potential of an impact. And she is part of an administration that, again, an economist might, say, okay, give Biden this much blame and the rest of it is just the global economy. You can make a very good case that, yes, this is a global issue because of Ukraine, because of Middle East turmoil, because of energy and all these other issues. And the United States economy is doing way better by leaps and bounds than any other economy around the world. One of the problems Harris has on this issue is that because President Biden is just not an able communicator right now, he has not made this argument for the last 3.5 years that I know things are hard, but look around the world. We're doing a lot better than anybody else.
Well, I have to say, she also blew it, in my opinion, in that debate where she did crush Trump. When that first question was asked about, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? It was so obvious to me the question was coming, and the obvious answer was most of us are, but clearly a lot of Americans are not. That. And we're going to direct our attention at those people.
Not just
There's
that.
no acknowledgement. I'm sorry.
We have been talking about housing here in Boston because it's taken off for a while, but all across the country now, people have moved out, got second houses, post-pandemic, they could. Housing basically has gone through the roof in many sections of the country, and it's really incredible that it's only in the last few months that it's become a discussion in our national politics, how we don't have enough housing, how we need millions and millions of new housing. It's almost like Hillary Clinton missed it the first time around when it was starting to be a problem, and they missed it again this time. It's odd.
The voters are always way ahead of the politicians. Yeah. That's why I'm gifted that I've been able to travel this year, because I think I'm a better reporter and I think I have a better eye on things than I have had in the last 2 cycles. just because I'm out there talking to decent, hardworking, Americans of all political persuasions who, Trump voters and Harris voters and undecided voters talk about housing. Trump voters and Harris voters and undecided voters talk about grocery prices. One thing that hasn't come up in this campaign is all voters all across this also talk about, my kids are still recovering from the isolation and being in school during COVID, and no candidate has asked about that. The voters are always way ahead of the politicians, way ahead of certainly the town I work in.
John King, speaking of talking to real voters, no one does it better than you. It's a pleasure to see you. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, John.
It'll be 5 weeks next Tuesday.
5 weeks.
Oh, God. We've been speaking with John King,
Be well,
CNN's
John.
chief national correspondent behind two great reporting projects this election cycle, All Over the Map and The Battleground. Thanks to John King.
6 weeks from today.
I know, God.
Oh, my God. Exactly.
Up next, a self-checkout check-in. So, one Olympic athlete had her life destroyed, lost her job because she forgot to scan some asparagus and ham at the self-checkout. And Walmart actually wants to charge you to use the self-checkout. Can you imagine that? What's up with that? Call or text us about how are you feeling these days about self-checkout. You are listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Aronson-Rath. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, local Haitians and their allies are rallying on the Common to push back against racist lies being spread by top Republicans. Boston City councilors are asking the state for help when it comes to late school buses. And the Celtics are speaking to the media as they get ready to start the season and defend their NBA title. That's starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Mass General Brigham, dedicated to building a world-class center of cancer care. With the most cancer surgeries and specialists in New England, they're committed to being with patients for every twist and turn. Learn more at massgeneralbrigham.org/cancer. And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds from medical bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Apparently, if you innocently forget to scan some produce at the self-checkout line at Walmart, you might be charged with a crime and lose your job. As Marjorie said, such is the case of this former Olympian. This is who this is, Megan Pettipies, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, terrible.
Who had her bag searched by Walmart security and she failed to scan some food items. Police found this is not nothing. Police found 3 disposable vapes, 2 unopened blister packs of anti-nausea medication. She was charged with theft. You know why? Because she is a thief.
Well, they didn't
forget her.
No. She didn't realize. She thought they were produce, and she thought that they marked them. And the vapes had nothing to do with why she was arrested.
It
was the stealing.
Okay, forget that then.
Okay.
So we're opening the lines to ask you: is the supposed convenience of the self-checkout worth, in case of Megan Pettipies, going to jail? And regardless of that, do you care about putting human cashiers out of work? Our number is 877-301-8970. As Marjorie said, it's our semi-regular self-checkout check-in. Do you use it? Do you hate it? And to be honest, do occasionally a few items skip the scanner and end up in your bag? 877-301-8970.
Well, that's what they're talking about. In these the normal middle class moms and dads, grandmas and grandpas are suddenly turning into shoplifters because they can't resist the temptation to try to slide something through the self-checkout kind of deal. We have to play my favorite sound now, though.
What is it?
Well, we have 2 of them. One is from a CVS. This is what you get at CVS, the robot voice, if you cannot work the scanner. Here it is.
Please wait. System processing.
Yeah.
Everybody hates that.
Everybody
okay,
hates that.
what's the other one?
And then this is from Walmart, apparently. Another message you've heard ad nauseum.
Unexpected item in bagging area. Remove this item before continuing.
These are like sadists who make these tapes.
And you hear them over and over and over again. And the poor people that work there probably hear these things 500 times a day. And if you notice at CBS, sometimes you can't tell which is the bagging area.
I can never
and
tell.
Which is the non-bagging
I'm so
area.
glad you said that.
Why don't they put a sign that says bagging area?
Because they get off on it. That's why. They like when people are miserable. And by the way, we should explain the Walmart thing you mentioned or I mentioned or somebody. Yep. Walmart, to use the self-checkout, I didn't know this till this morning, you have to become a member. And the theory behind this is if you pay to become a member, you are less likely to steal from Walmart, I don't know why, than if you're just a casual Walmart customer and not a member. Can you explain that to me or no?
I don't know. Maybe you feel some allegiance to Walmart. You don't want to screw them or something like that. I don't know. 877-301-8970. How do you feel about self-checkout?
Do you use it?
Not if I have a bunch of stuff. I mean, who wants to go with a whole carriage full of stuff?
I love doing it. You don't like the ding when you get it right, when you put the code and it goes
if I have and some places are limiting you to 15 items or less than that.
Wow.
Is it fewer or less?
Fewer items.
Fewer than
is a number.
Fewer than 15
less
items.
is a quantity.
Yes, fewer than 15
it's
items.
It's a big thing with me.
And I think that's
a
big thing. You don't want to be behind somebody in the self-checkout who's got a full carriage.
Can I tell you
something? You'll be there all day.
There's another issue. I think you have an obligation as a human being, not just you, all of us who care about other people. Before you go to self-checkout, you know the one thing you have to do?
What?
Look to see if there's a line at a human cashier.
That's right.
And if there's no line at a human cashier, you have a moral imperative to go get in that line. Is that not correct?
You are really clever.
Or pretend you didn't see her. That's the other way you can deal with it.
I don't know if it's usually a moral imperative.
I think it's a moral
most people feel
imperative.
if there's nobody in the line with a real person.
Oh, right, it'll go fast.
They're going to go there rather than the self-checkout. Anyway, 877-301-8970. Silas from Falmouth, you are first on the self-checkout hour.
Hey, Silas.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Excellent.
So I just wanted to say that I don't like the self-checkout. I think that it takes jobs away from humans.
It does.
Also, I don't like how condescending the robots sound if you do something wrong.
They really do.
Put the item in the bagging area. Please remove all bagged items.
Exactly.
Pretty annoying.
And you can't tell where the bagging area is, as I just said. Here's the robot voice from CBS one more time.
Don't go away, Silas.
Ready
I have
for the
a
robot
question
voice?
for you. Yeah.
Please help. Unexpected item in bagging area. Remove this item before continuing.
Okay, fine. So, Silas, even though you hate it, do you use it?
I will, sadly, yes.
Well, I was so glad to hear you say that because I hate it and I use it too. So I'm glad we're in the same boat. Silas, thank you very kindly for your call. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970. You know, you raised an issue I wasn't going to raise today. Why is it that they don't have a sign all the time saying which is the bagging area and which is the other area?
Exactly.
And it has to be because they want you to be confused.
I don't know, because sometimes they have the CVS bags, you know, those plastic bags. They're not supposed to have those plastic bags, but they're reusable, I guess they claim. And you think, okay, that's the bagging area because the bags are there. And then you put your stuff in the other side and you find out that you are wrong.
You ever intentionally stolen anything?
When I was a little girl.
No, not when you were a little girl. I know that.
Suit.
As an adult.
No.
Okay, how about...
why? Because I value my job, Jim.
Okay, before you do that...
I don't think I could be a radio
Wait,
talk
that's
show
the only
host
reason you
if
do
I
it?
was a thief. Well, no, you're not supposed to do it.
Well, it's a little late to say that.
I would not want to...
Okay, here's another one for you.
Fired like the Olympic star there.
Wait a second. So you're at, let's say, Whole Foods.
Yes.
Okay, and you have an orange. You have to type in orange. And when you type it in, two things come up.
Yeah.
Organic orange, which is like $42 a pound, and a regular orange, which is like $1.89 a pound.
Yep.
Do you ever say it's a regular orange when it's an organic orange?
I never go with the produce into self-checkout. It's too confusing.
Is that really true?
No, it takes too much time. You have to press too many buttons.
Wow.
I go with things that are easy to scan.
So you never intentionally steal anything from the self-checkout? Is that
I
what
have
you're
not
saying?
stolen anything. Would you like to make a confession?
No, I don't do it because of my job. I don't do it because it is morally reprehensible to do.
Okay, Jim. That's your story. You're sticking to it.
I've occasionally said something was not organic. Once or twice.
Okay.
I have. It's a political statement.
Okay, Joe.
Hi, Joe in the car.
Joe in the car. Thank you for calling.
Hey.
Hi, thanks. Big fans.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I used to live in La Jolla, California.
Oh, wow.
You know, La Jolla is, and they had a Bond supermarket chain out there, and they took the self-service checkouts out.
Because there were too many thieves?
Too many rich people were stealing. Yeah, the rich people were stealing too much.
Is that really true, or that's your interpretation? Is that true?
That's what they say. That's what they told me. That's what they told me. I said, where did they go? They said, too many problems.
Yeah, that's what they claim. They
I
claim,
love that. That's great, Joe. Thanks for the call.
You know, they do other things, like what they'll say they're buying carrots, which are cheaper, when really they're buying avocados or something that's more expensive. That they'll claim the produce is something else when they press those little buttons. Yeah, that's very.
It's interesting
very
you know
sneaky.
that, Marjorie.
Well, I'm reading it right here in the Independent,
sure you are.
talking about that, and they also talk about how a lot of it is, as Joe just said, middle class or even wealthy people are stealing. It's a thrill, Jim. They want to get the thrill from stealing at the self-checkout. But you know something? I guess they have a big-time problem in the Netherlands with loneliness.
No.
Yes.
Oh, a lot of Europe is addressing that. Remember, there's a minister of loneliness or something in the
Great
UK.
Britain.
Yeah,
Yep, that's right. So, introduced in 2019 by the Dutch supermarket chain Jumbo as part of the government's One Against Loneliness campaign, they have chatty checkouts, slow shopping lanes for customers who aren't in a rush and would prefer to have assistance from a person and chat up the person when they are checking out.
Well, I read that story too. Read the next paragraph.
What's the next paragraph?
The customer ended up dating the self-checkout thing, which is really quite a lovely story.
They're with a real person because they want to chat with a real person because they're lonely.
I understand the concept.
Okay.
And we've talked about robots, which actually make it, when the choice is between a robot and no bot, as opposed to, I mean, you don't have a choice of a human.
Right.
The robot is, I guess, I mean, it took me a long time to get there, better than nothing, you know?
Lisa in Smithfield, Rhode Island.
Hey,
Thank you
Lisa,
for
what's
calling.
up?
Hi, I'm in North Smithfield.
Wherever.
I wanted to, I love you guys. Wanted to say that I absolutely, the self-checkouts, 9 times out of 10 that I use them, there's some kind of a problem. Then you have to wait for the person to come get and, you know, to help you in that area. And it's not me. It's usually in the machine. And then also that roaming robot through the store, every time I go by it, I want to kick it.
What's the name of that thing? It's driving me nuts. What's the name of it?
Stop and Shop?
What is the name of this?
I don't know. The thing with the googly eyes.
Marty, thank you.
I don't know. It has
Hate
googly eyes.
Hate it.
Marty, I hate it.
Okay,
I hate it. I want to kick it. I would never do that.
Well, don't kick it. Lisa, thank you for the call. A couple of texters were not very kind to me.
Yes.
And an anonymous texter says, Marjorie never stole from Wawa.
That is correct.
What is the texter intimating?
Well, that you stole from Wawa,
Whatever.
which Jim mysteriously lost his job at Wawa.
No, I did not.
Under
Excuse me.
undisclosed circumstances.
Excuse me. I did not lose my job. I resigned when they were ready to make the. I told you this a million times, including the air. I was the assistant manager for the Wawa on the University of Pennsylvania
right.
campus. They said there was the regional manager came in, said there'd been theft. They were going to surprise the employees the next day and make them take lie detector tests. But they said to show that we're even-handed, we're going to make you, as the assistant manager, take one as well. And I decided, as an act of solidarity, I'd resign. Now, Dan in Dorchester says Jim doesn't steal from the self-checkout. He feels guilty. He already ate the pre-made food.
Jim
which
graces
sadly is true.
at the hot bar. And by the way, apparently they have a name for these people that seemingly well-intentioned patrons who steal regularly. Swipers.
Wow.
That's what they call them. Yeah, they would not steal using any other techniques, says this criminologist who studied them. They're not interested in putting chocolate down their pants or a piece of steak in their coat. But they have grown, they've just become used to stealing since the introduction of self-service checkouts, which, as a previous caller said, is a reason why some places are getting rid of them, Jim.
So have you ever put chocolate in your pants?
No, I have
Speaking
not.
of that,
Have you put chocolate in your pants, Jim?
I have many a time, actually. Who hasn't put, Jamie, you put chocolate in your pants? Of course he has.
Okay.
Why wouldn't you?
Lisa on 495, thank you for calling.
Thank you, Lisa.
I find it terribly annoying that I'm now working for this company and they're not paying me or giving me a discount. And then I don't understand why there's 45 unstaffed aisles and there's one aisle where you can do it yourself.
You know, Lisa, I don't know if people know what you're saying. Dennis from Beverly, who texted, agrees with you. I will not use self-checkout until I get the employee discount, meaning you're doing the work of somebody who they pay to work at the company. Why don't you get a break?
Correct. And then if you go to Walmart, they treat you like a thief and they want to see your receipt. Like I'm good enough to work for you, but you're not going to pay me.
I love your attitude, Lisa.
Well,
thank you for the call.
A texter says if you're a member at Walmart, they have your credit card on file and can charge you for anything they see you walk out of the store with a camera. I think they're watching us at the checkouts, right? You can see yourself.
I'm sure they're cameras.
So, haven't you? Well, at least at CVS, 'cause there's not a Walmart around here. Remember, Tom and Nino didn't want them to come into town.
I remember, yeah.
Because they were non-union. I think that was the reason, was it not?
I believe so.
Yeah, but you're on the camera at the checkout at
Well,
CVS.
except
I
there's a
figured
way
they're
to fool the
watching
camera, too.
What's that, Jim?
My experience has been, haven't done this personally, if you do put chocolate in your pants, the camera trains on that, and as a result, exactly. Maggie on Route 2, you're next on Boston Public Radio. We're talking about self-checkout, the pros and mostly the cons. Hi.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie. It's Pickleball Maggie.
Oh, hey, Pickleball Maggie. How are you?
All right. I love self-check. Now, probably the reason is because I'm a control freak, and I like bagging my produce
So do
and
I.
pricing it ahead of time, and getting to the self-check and doing my thing and making sure that the milk and the big can of tomatoes aren't in the same bag. And I do have a question. The places that I go to that have self-check have people who monitor the self-check. So if they got rid of the self-check, wouldn't those people just move back to be cashiers?
Well, that's an excellent question, Maggie, but I have to say it's too deep for us to be able to answer, but it's an excellent one for the listeners. Maggie, thank you. Keep at that pickleball thing of yours.
You know,
appreciate it.
Jen from Wellesley says she loves checkout because she doesn't like strangers breathing and touching
On her stuff?
my stuff.
Well, you know what
Yeah.
Maggie said, don't you like to bag your own stuff? I'm not anti-bagger.
No, I don't.
Don't you like your stuff bagged in a
No, the
particular
baggers
way?
do a much better job than I do. Yeah. Chris from Rossi says self-checkout is like apple picking. You're doing their job for them, and it's annoying. But don't tell my wife because we're going apple picking this weekend, and a lot of people don't like apple
You
picking.
know,
I'm
you say
with
you don't like bagging your own stuff?
I don't.
You know, you and I are probably going to be doing that in a couple of years. I'm serious. It's not when
Well,
this thing
they'll
dries
teach
up.
me the correct technique.
Why do you not? I can't believe.
Because the
I've
baggers
never
do
heard
it
of
better.
a person.
The baggers do it better.
That's
Listen
totally
to this.
untrue.
I have Honeycrisp taste on a red delicious budget.
Yeah,
I don't steal.
thief.
However, I may or may not select the cheaper option of produce.
Well, that's what I was talking about. The orange organic and the orange
Yeah.
that isn't organic.
Yeah. Don't they have little tags to say if they're organic on the side? Yeah, I think so. Samantha from Medford. What do you think,
Hi,
Samantha?
Samantha Medford.
All right, so I've got a good case for you as to why to use self-checkout.
Why is that?
I was at an unnamed Whole Foods recently, and I'm on my way to self-checkout. I get a woman saying, "Come to my aisle. It's open. I'll take care of you." She's very chatty, proceeds to ring me up incorrectly, can't figure out what she did wrong, can't void it on her own register, and ended up finishing the transaction, giving me the receipt, and sending it to customer service to have it taken care of.
Oh, God.
By the way, there's no worse experience than that. Than they make a mistake, which most of them
Exactly.
don't, and then you have to. But that's aberrational, Samantha. That doesn't happen every time, right?
It doesn't happen every time, but I will say I recognize this woman and should have known not to go to her checkout aisle because it's happened a couple of times before. So, bad on me, but also a reason for me to keep going to self-checkout.
Samantha, you're a woman with strong opinions. Thank you for the call. Now, I'm embarrassed as a faithful Market Basket. You know what Market Basket does not have?
A self-checkout.
Self-checkout.
Yeah.
Anonymous texter says, as a Market Basket shopper, Jim of all people should know that self-checkout is blasphemous. Just another way for retail companies to cut costs without increasing employee pay or passing the savings on to consumers. Until stores start paying me for my labor in the self-checkout lane, or at least offering a discount, I will pass. And I'm assuming, I don't know this to be the case, you know that there's a very strong relationship between the guy who owns Market Basket and his workers, as was evidenced by that situation 10 years ago when even his managers stopped working in solidarity with the owner versus his cousin or whatever. I'm sure they don't have self-checkout because they think it's unfair to the people who they pay, who are cashiers.
That's why.
Good
that's
for
why
them.
the employees
Are loyal.
Love Walmart.
Not
One of the-
Walmart.
I
not
mean,
Walmart.
Market Basket.
Market
Excuse me.
Basket. You're
One of
welcome.
the texters is pointing out that the screens are full of germs, Jim.
You don't touch a screen.
I hadn't thought of that.
You don't touch a screen.
Well, you do with your finger.
Oh, that part.
Yeah, you do touch it.
What,
yeah.
you open the doors with your elbow in some places.
Sometimes I do.
So why can't you hit the screen with your elbow?
Well, it's a little bit more difficult.
It is more difficult.
To do it with your elbow.
You know what you're willing? What I do sometimes?
What?
I ask Jamie to come along and hit the keys for me. And he's very good about that. You take him to the supermarket with you, hits the keys, then you can say you can go back to work.
Okay.
He's so generous. He
Here's
really is.
Dan and Melrose. Ending cashiers would be a blessing. They were the unsung heroes of COVID,
They
which
were
is so true.
for about a minute.
Locking someone in a position for 8 hours plus, watching every motion they make is demeaning. I've seen them treated with total disrespect, and they have to take it for $12 an hour. Are we up to, when are we going to be up to $15?
I think we are. Are we? Didn't we reach 15
I don't
already?
know.
I'm pretty sure we got to the.
Are we at 15?
I'm
Okay,
pretty sure
we're still
we do.
15.
Allie and Leominster, you're next on Boston Public Radio. We're doing our sort of semi-annual discussion about self-checkout. Hey there, Allie. Hi.
Hi guys, how are you?
We're good.
Just like you know, I really hate self-checkout.
Why is that?
The reason why is I am convinced that it takes away jobs from people, and you know we need more jobs. Like you said, Jim, market basket. Every register is human based. They can find people. I always ask, why isn't there humans here? Oh, we can't find people. I think that's BS.
Yeah.
Allie, we got to let you go. You made your point well. The connection is atrocious, but you made your point very well. Two things. One, the minimum wage in Massachusetts in January of last year, thanks to that ballot campaign, went to $15 an hour, applies to most employees. Now, which of our coworkers used to work at Market Basket?
I think Zoe.
That would be Zoe.
Yes.
Zoe writes this, Market Basket's official line on self-checkout. They don't do it because the company, this is fabulous, quote, values human-to-human interactions and prides itself on just people taking care of people. Arthur Demoulas would often issue edicts like this, including he did not want the cashiers to say, no worries. I love this. In response to thank yous, we had to say, you're welcome.
Oh, I like that.
That's pretty
I like
great.
that.
That
Here's
is really
another
great.
Market Basket fan, John from Oxford. He says, I never use self-checkouts. Market Basket, which manages to employ an amount of people equivalent to the size of General Patton's Third Army, yet it still has the lowest prices and no self-checkouts, as we've been talking
That's a wonderful point.
Yeah.
It does have the lowest prices.
It does, and it has really good stuff in there. I don't know how they manage to do
Well, not to
all
mention,
that.
people are getting back to the person thing Zoe was writing about. You don't go often. I go, as you know, every week, at least once a week. People are so nice to you and so welcoming, and even if they're not sure that they remember you, they treat you like you're a returning customer, which is actually quite wonderful.
All right, Christina from Woodstock, Connecticut says I'm wrong, that the bagging platforms at CVS stores are clearly marked. Now, maybe they are in Connecticut. Did you notice they're not marked around here?
I believe they're marked in Russian, so that's the problem. Patty and JP, you're next on Boston Public Radio. What's your deal?
Well, I happen to love self-checkout.
Oh.
And yes, I do. And I often, matter of fact, the store I like them the best ones are Wegmans. But I don't like waiting in line and then to go through with someone doing it for me and then have them be snippy or nasty and they don't know how to bag things. And so I do it myself. Wegmans actually added, when they first had them, introduced them, they added 8 more a while after that. And they're almost always full because people do use them all the time. I can also, this is the big thing. I'm older and I'm not really strong, and I can make the bag the size I want. I live on the 3rd floor. I have to carry them up when I get home. Yeah. And sometimes you'll say to them, please put the heavy things in one bag, and one heavy thing, and
in each
instead
bag,
they'll put and they put 3 large bottles of juice in one.
Hate that.
Yeah, and I can barely get it into the cart. So I can bring my own bags, do it the way I want.
Sure.
And as far as taking jobs away, I know Wegmans, they can never even find people. They're practically begging them to come work there. So I don't think, and most of the other stores I've seen, I don't think they have enough checkout people. So I don't think that's a problem, taking people's jobs away. But I find them, some of them are annoying if they're not set up right, or the software's not good. But
Patty, you covered about 42 topics there brilliantly. Thank you very much. That's terrific.
Okay.
An anonymous texter makes a great point.
What?
How could the store complain about incorrect pricing when I check out? They gave me 0 training, which is a wonderful point, actually. I like that.
One texter says Hannaford seems to be running some sort of psychology experiment by leaving one register open and making everyone check themselves out with full carriages, so I swipe. And we have another texter, Jim. You talked about how you resigned from Wawa the day before they were bringing the lie detector test.
That's correct.
In solidarity with
That's
your coworkers.
totally true. Yep.
Well, this texter says Jim's just like that sheriff. He pled not guilty. Then, when the evidence came in, he resigned.
Well, I was not charged with anything, by the way, and I was a pretty good assistant manager. By the way, I was an assistant manager of a little tiny supermarket on the campus.
That's terrific, Jim.
I was pretty good.
I'm very proud of you.
I was pretty good at that.
Those are the days.
I was pretty good at that.
Okay.
It is amazing how many steaks did end up in my apartment. I have to say, that is, considering I had very little money, it was amazing. Now, I always like to guess where Jared is.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Jared, I would say Jared, the last time he self-checked out was maybe 2002.
Oh, I don't know.
Not a chance.
I see him as a self-checker.
Not a chance. Okay, let's hear it.
Break the tie. Are
yes
you a
or no?
self-checker
How
or
about
not?
it, Jared?
Okay. Can I have it two ways?
Yeah.
Sure.
So in Boston, often self-checkout, but I spend a lot of time in New Hampshire in the summer, and so I stop at Market Basket all the time to come home, and I love it. It's like going into a Hollywood movie set because they're all in their aprons. The stores are perfect. You have to go through the checkout line. It's like being in Mayberry in the Hollywood set, and everybody has a story, and half of the checkout people want to be comedians, and I think it's really entertaining.
So does Aunt B work at Market Basket in New Hampshire? Or
Yeah.
She doesn't.
Absolutely.
Okay,
I
fine.
love that. That's very quaint.
It is. It's lovely.
Okay.
So, by
what's
the way,
on
let me
show?
just be clear. Wait, before you tell us about the show, they don't have self-checkout in the New Hampshire stores either. I assume they don't have many stores, right?
Absolutely not.
That's pretty great.
Does
Okay.
Market Basket also answer their phone?
Well, that's what a texter
Oh
says.
my
Marion Wareham
God.
says they answer their phones, no annoying prompts.
God.
By the
that
way,
is
how
wonderful.
huge is that?
That is huge.
I've never called them, so I don't know.
I was going to. I was on hold. Well, never mind. Don't forget my story.
Well, it's a little late.
Go ahead, Jared.
Too late. Go ahead. What's the whatever?
So we're on the Culture Show today. We're talking about Mamma Mia. Do you know that this is the 25th anniversary of Mamma Mia?
Oh, my God,
the
no.
musical before it became the film. So we speak with Phyllida Lloyd. She is the British theater maker who had always spent her time doing Wagner's Ring Cycle and Shakespeare before she took on this project and made it what it is. So she shares her memories of creating that.
So do you know who the biggest fan of ABBA maybe in the Western world is?
I do. Christopher
Who?
Mueller.
Christopher Muther. How sad is that? What else do you have on the show?
How could you not love ABBA?
Okay, go. What else?
And Betty Lou, who has written a new cookbook called The Chinese Way. That teaches basically Americans how to raid your pantry, and it's very easy to cook the Chinese way, even if you only have maple syrup and Spam. And we'll look at Paul Revere, who at 61 years old basically spent all of his money so he could create a copper enterprise.
Donald Trump today said Paul Revere's doing a great job, by the way. I just want you to know. So,
Because he's still alive.
Google that if you haven't figured it out, and you'll understand what I'm talking about. Hey, Jared there, have fun on your show. We'll be listening 3 minutes and 10 seconds.
I thought it was a lovely
See you later. That was a lovely
story
summary.
about New Hampshire.
It was?
Yes.
Lovely.
About the down-homeness
Oh,
of,
it was nice, yeah.
of the supermarkets up there.
Thank
in New
you, Jared.
Hampshire.